Hello, Glowbusters. Yes, of course they're serious. You do? You have? No kidding. Uh-huh. Oh, they'll cure your globitis this week. Thank you. We got one!
Ladies and gentlemen,
It's the Glowbusters.
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators.
and now, here's your host.
And welcome everybody to Glowbusters, Scoping Out the Sun. I am your host, Bob Xanadude60, and we are back with a Sunday edition of Glowbusters. And today we have a very special guest that actually, even though he has been kind of present in the community, at least as far as my knowledge, all the way back to the 2019 Dallas conference, where he made an appearance there. He didn't speak or anything, but he was there. And then last year at the Flattoberfest, or maybe it was the Solar Return, one of the two. I think it was the Solar Return. He had kind of a table set up, and I missed him there. And then I missed him this year. So what I finally did get to do is watch his presentation online. And you know, I have to be the first one to admit, a lot of it kind of confused me because I didn't understand a lot of the jargon. And so, you know, I got a chance to talk to Corey, and I called him up and invited him on the show, got a chance to talk to him and answer some questions. And even though I am still not 100% on the model, I do understand a lot more things about it. And, you know, that's a good thing. So one thing I did do in, you know, trying to make every effort to understand this, because of the fact that, you know, he speaks very confidently. And, you know, you just get this impression like he really is on top of what's going on. So what I wound up doing was I called up my buddy, Master Gunner Sergeant Brian Burton, who you guys may know him from the Mark Sargent show. And he's been an expert on Mark's show. And I sent him Corey's material and I said, so what do you think? I go, am I losing a lot of this because of the jargon? And he wrote back and he goes, yeah, we tend to do that. We tend to talk, you know, we kind of assume everybody does this. So I then contacted Corey and said, okay, so what we need to do is we need to kind of, you know, ask a lot of questions. That's one thing for sure. And kind of break this down into a little bit more digestible segments, at least for people like me. And I know there's other people out there that, you know, we're having some issues with it as well. And, you know, conversely, there are also other people that seem to catch right onto it and really understood it and really appreciated it. So as I am learning, we all are learning. And, you know, hopefully we'll get some really good suggestions about this. One thing that I have kind of come to the conclusion on, I'll ask Corey about this just shortly, is it's not necessarily meant to prove the flat earth. And I think in a lot of ways it proves the flat earth model wrong too, but only in that the model that they have given us is incorrect, in, you know, as far as the Gleason. But what its true strength is that it absolutely annihilates the ball earth model. And, you know, I'm good with that. That's definitely a proof that I want to have in my arsenal. And I think once we all get a chance to actually understand that, then I think that this presentation is going to help us all out a lot. So there you have it. So let's go ahead and introduce our panel today. We have a lot of people here. And like I said, I did that because I want as many takes as possible on this. And I want to hit Corey for, you know, with as many questions as we can get. And, you know, cover this as comprehensively as we can do it. So there you have it. So first up, as always, we have Jeran from Jeranism. How you doing, Jeran?
Doing fantastic, Bob. Looking forward to the show. Should be interesting to hear what Corey's got to say.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, next up, we have John TheMorgile. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing very well. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if I was still muted. Doing very well, guys. Doing very well. Hope y'all are having a blessed and fantastic day. Looking forward to another great show. Hello, hello.
All right, beautiful. And next up, we have somebody that hasn't been with us in a few shows, but is still very much a globebuster nonetheless, and that is Mr. Ben, Taboo Conspiracy. How you doing, Ben?
Great to be here. It's always an honor to be with you guys. I'm really looking forward to this show. I've been really trying to delve into everything that Corey has said and try to make a 5-minute presentation out of it. It's been quite difficult, but I'm looking forward to asking him some questions and getting some answers, because I think with all these proofs, we always should proceed with caution and not get, not just be the sheeple following the herd, but always being wary of any new evidence, and to make sure that we analyze it carefully and ask the right questions. So,
yep.
I'm glad to be here.
I absolutely agree with you, Jen, and that's why I was thrilled when you said you would come on and pitch out some questions. So that's awesome. All right, and next up we have Mr. Zack Zabala, or Good Times for All, if you like. And Zack, I invited him on because, while he was out doing his nomading, he was keeping track of the sun, and honestly, the observations that he made did not make any sense to him according to the heliocentric model. So that's where he kind of gave up on that point. But hopefully we can make some more observations and understand what he was seeing a little bit better. I think obviously because he was trying to put it into the context of the heliocentric model, and it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work right at all. So how you doing, Zack?
Yeah, doing good, Bob. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Yeah, I spent like 8 months, and this was before I did the Nomad, and this was while I was in Indiana. And I did it for about 10 months. Took my sextant out every day, measured sun at morning, midday, evening, and matched it with the U.S. Naval Observatory notes. And I was measuring sunspot rotations and all this stuff. And after 10 months of doing it, I came to the conclusion that I knew less about the sun than I thought I did when I started. So yeah, I am really excited to hear, try to put all this together. And I'm sure once I get a better grasp of what Corey's saying, it's gonna peel some of those layers of the onion for me.
Yep, I hear that. Beautiful.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Real quick before I forget, I had a question for you, and this is going to be something you might have to dig back a few years. But do you remember a few years ago you did, I guess you could say, experiment with, I believe you had a sundial, and you were timing the sun at high noon and like how long it took to pass through that 90 degrees overhead. Do you remember that?
I do. That was a thing that Antonio Subrats printed out, and we took it out in our backyard and gave the sun angles at solar noon.
Right. And my question to you was, what I remember there was something really, interesting about that. I just couldn't remember exactly what it was. So like, did it take more than 15, like, did it seem to move slower than 15 degrees per hour at that point? Or what was the crux of that? Do you remember exactly what the crux of it was?
I'm not sure. Cami might know. Cami, do you remember exactly what we concluded? Do you remember what it was? Go ahead.
I remember what they were looking for. It was measuring solar noon every day and then matching that time with the actual time of our clock and showing how solar noon and the noon on a clock actually differ between about a half an hour throughout the year. Only 2 days a year is solar noon actually at noon, and you can actually watch it. It'll go about 15 minutes ahead and then 15 minutes behind. But yeah, the time the sun passes solar noon changes.
Didn't it take like several minutes to get through that 90 degrees? It was something about that specifically. Like it was almost as if it stopped for several minutes. Like it was.
Morgile is right. It's
Yeah.
like time stopped for it. It was like, and again, we were at high altitude, which is something else, is one of the parameters that Corey looks into that I think will really, the altitude you're at affect the way you see the sky. So that is something that he puts into his parameters, which is one of the reasons I've looked at a lot of people triangulating and what they're doing. I'm interested in his distance limitations on this, but what he's doing is triangulating and basing reality on it, that we actually do fire weapons, giving us little pieces of reality and little pieces of triangulation that are working with space and with time.
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely. So, all right.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it, guys.
All right, no problem. And last but not least, as you heard, we have my wife Cami with us, and Cami's got some interesting questions as well. So, how you doing, Cami?
I am doing just really good. I'm wondering how you made it through the whole panel without anybody saying happy birthday, Bob. That's what I'm here for. It was yesterday. I'm now officially with somebody. I can't believe how old he is. I cannot believe I'm with such an old man. And the only thing that he can probably say about that is that we're not very different in ages. So I'm getting older right along with him. 61 years old now. Congratulations, baby. You made it this far. Another year wiser.
Yeah, and another year older and slower too. But well, thank you very much. So it's kind of interesting because in Colorado, I was born at 11:42 p.m. But that would make on November 6th, but that would make my birthday November 7th here on the East Coast. So I technically kind of get, two birthdays today and yesterday. So I just thought that was kind of weird how that works.
Yeah, he's trying to get another Oreo cookie shake out of it. I know what's going on here.
Yeah, she was totally spoiling me with the desserts and stuff yesterday and the nice dinner and all that stuff. So it was pretty cool. It's good to be me. So, all right. So let's get to our guest of honor. And Corey is a Master Gunnery Sergeant. I understand that you have a really long resume. You spent, I believe, 26 years in the military and then went out and did some consulting and, for the military contractors. And then somehow you got involved in Flat Earth. And here you are with us today. So how are you doing, sir?
All right. Doing great, Bob. Doing great to the rest of the Globe Busters. It's nice to meet you, John Morgile, Jeran, Ben from Taboo Conspiracy, Zack, and Cami. Great to meet you all today and the rest of the audience out there.
Yep. Oh, and you know what? It looks like you showed up.
I'm here. Sorry for my delay, but I'm here. And happy birthday.
No, well, thank you, Iru.
Yeah.
All right, so Iru made it, and now the panel is complete. So we got a bunch of us today. So go ahead, John.
I understand correctly. We have 364 shopping days until your birthday. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
All right, great.
So you better get right to that. So, all right. So, Corey, I guess go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then, we will move into, well, what I did is I posted your presentation for Plateauberfest on the Globebusters, and hopefully it's got over 10,000 views on it already, and I just posted it yesterday, so that's kind of cool. So a lot of people have seen it, but I figured if you could kind of give an abbreviated presentation, just to kind of catch the rest of the people up, and then we will kind of start hitting you with some questions on it. And also, if you wouldn't mind, I think we're going to be asking you to break down some of the terms that you're using. So as you kind of go through those, don't be surprised if somebody in the panel hits you with that and, trying in an effort to try to understand here. Now, one thing I will say is that we've had quite a who's who of trolls that have come over, from the baller community, but they really haven't had a whole lot to say about it. Other than, we're just stupid, which is pretty normal. That's all they ever have is, just ad hom insults and stuff like that. But they didn't really have anything of substance to say against your model. And in fact, I think one of the most constructive comments that we got is actually from one of our own, which a guy I didn't even know was around anymore, named Chippy the Chipmunk. And I've always thought he was a pretty smart dude. And he asked a really good question, and Corey did have an answer for it, so I was good to hear that. But
love Chippy.
Yeah, he's cool. I don't know what I liked about that guy, but other than the fact he did it with a little puppet, but I thought he was really cool, and he had some good material out.
There's another one. That's another one I've got to resubscribe to, because YouTube is such a butthole about unsubscribing, and I'm sure that's another channel that I was, unintentionally unsubscribed from, and I've got to remember to resubscribe to old Chippy.
Yep, for sure. So, yeah. So okay, so yeah, if you want to take us through that, Corey, I don't know if you want to share your screen and start that way, or how you want to do this, but take it away.
Sure. So basically looking at, I'll try and share the screen there. Let me know if you're seeing it.
Okay, let me kill my screen share. Okay, I have stopped my screen share, so you should be able to do what you did before.
Is it good to go? You guys seeing it? Going up?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, maybe I'm sharing it at the wrong. Oh, okay, there it is. But sharing.
There it came up.
Here we go.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, I think, Bob, you just kind of, you briefly went over it, and really, I went into the U.S. military, specifically the U.S. Army, and I went into artillery. I was in the field artillery, and I did all job facets, cannon gunnery, or forward observer, fire direction. As you go up in your career within that field, you kind of get to do all facets of it. Eventually, you go into Master Gunner certification. And while I was in the military, eventually you get up to an advisory level. You start doing a lot of technical writing for the military, for the Army, and for other units as far as their SOPs and kind of the do's and don'ts. And then also within the as a Master Gunner,
what's SOP? SOP, sorry.
Standard operating procedure. So it's just kind of like
Gotcha.
It's the rules and kind of regulations of how to function or how to do a job, or what your medal is, what your mission essential task is, and those what you're going to do is those your mission is basically drives your medal or your specific task. So you got to kind of incorporate those into your standard operating procedure, how you function as a unit, as an element. Did I kind of explain that?
Yep.
Good to go.
Made sense to me.
Perfectly. And also, real quick, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm not getting any visual joy on the screen share. Is it just me? I'm just seeing blank screen.
It's just you, or we're seeing it, or I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it too.
Okay. I'll try to pop out and join back in. So I'm sorry, guys. If it's just me, then continue. I'm terribly sorry.
No problem. Okay. And then finally, most importantly, I think is, in gunnery and especially artillery, we do celestial survey operations. In other words, we use the sun and we use the stars to put in our own survey. So we call those sun shots for the sun, and then a star shot for at night. So we have full capability to put in our own survey. And the reason that we do that, we have to be extremely accurate in what we do because we're firing long ranges. So we need to, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I always found that a very intricate field. And then, of course, after that, after I retired in 2006, I went into defense contracting and did various jobs in there. In tactical communication. I was up in Afghanistan until this past March when everybody started to leave out and come back to the U.S. And then I've been back here since. So I did about 15 years in defense contracting between Afghanistan and Kuwait. So again, a lot of technical writing. 2017, I worked on publishing the Defense Contractor 101 handbook, and that's put out by Zilbrus Publishing. It's also available on Amazon as well. And that's basically if somebody's looking to get in defense contracting, how to do it, whether you're coming out of college or out of the military. Pretty easy speak language. So that's kind of a little bit of my background.
Awesome. Very good. Okay.
So I think the next area, Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem.
And that is flat Earth intel. I mean, why do we want to use the sun? Why should we use the sun, or why should we use the stars? And I think that's the real big question. In other words, hey, Mr. Corey, looking at the sun in the daytime sky, how can I tell if the Earth is flat or if we're on a curved surface? Ideally,
Right.
I think that's what a lot of people. Well, how does that work? How do we do that? You know, what's the process for that? And that's kind of what I looked at when I started looking into after I saw all the good material on flat Earth, and there's a ton of it out there. I was pretty convinced that okay, the Earth is flat, but I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to set up a process and application using military science, geometry, and the sun. That's got to be the answer. The answer is there. I know it is, because we do celestial survey. And in order to attach the physical reality, you've got to use geometry. You can't get away from it. And that's really big in understanding certain aspects of geometry. And I call it kind of applied geometry. And it's a little bit different. And I'll talk about applied geometry as far as what is a range fan, and we use them in military science to determine weapons firing areas. In other words, if you're going to fire a round, I need to know where that round is going at its maximum range. Okay, so that round has got to impact into what is called the impact area. So there is a what they call a surface danger zone, or an SDZ. So we have to make those. We can do those manually, or we can do those using a computerized program, which most of them are done now by computer, which is called ARGIS, and it's ARGIS. And you can look that up on the web. But the military, that's what they use to do the automated or computerized weapons range fans, or surface danger zones. Okay. And that's for live fire ranges. Those are the safety boxes. So when you're firing, whether it's a tank, artillery, rockets, mortar, pistol, machine gun, you're firing into a designated impact area where you want that round to impact safely, where it won't injure anybody. Make sense? How are we looking? Looking okay?
Makes sense so far, yes.
Okay. So this is a little different angle. And I always tell people, I said, look, your head might hurt a little, might be a little bit tight after I get done talking, because it's something you don't know.
Okay. Hey, Ben, did you have a question really quick?
Yeah, I did have a question. Corey, could you explain, because maybe this is off topic, but how perspective plays a role in that with respect to artillery and shooting, maybe even over an obstacle? Because that's an issue I have with respect to the current calculators out there, is that the bulge it's an orthographic view. It doesn't explain, because a distant object is going to be losing its size with respect to the bulge, which would maintain, if I'm making sense, that bulge would actually cover more of the distant object as it gets further away, but it's not, that part isn't explained in a orthographic view. I was just curious if they have a good grasp of that in artillery.
So that's ballistics. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to fast forward here. I'm going to show you a table. And I kind of wanted to stay in sequence, but that's okay. I'm going to answer your question. And this is in military science piece. See this table? It says U.S. artillery weapon systems. Okay.
Okay.
Everything that you see on that table counts for artillery. What's really important. Now, I want you to look at position. Look in the middle where it says gun target line position. And now you're going to hear me use a term when I talk about the sun. You're going to hear me use the term sun target line, or you might see that in some of my documents on the website. Now, I tried to kind of smooth that down, but that's where this comes from. It is the observer to the sun. So in other words, position from the observer. Now I want you to look at where it says Meteorological Datum Plane Station. What does that mean? That means in artillery, we consider everything on a plane at the same level, just for easy speak. That's how it works. Why? Because, and I'll go back on a little history on artillery. The artillery used to have what they called 175 millimeter guns. And they came out they were around World War II. So these guns shoot a long way. You can shoot 20 plus miles. But the problem with a gun is it has a low trajectory. So what the Army found out is they were having inaccuracy. They were having rounds that skip. So they're called skippers. So they'll ricochet off the ground and they'll just skip and they'll go off target. The round won't explode and they have a lot of duds. So what military science did in artillery is they developed what is called the howitzer. The howitzer basically shoots at a high angle, a projectile, and that angle goes up into it goes up, and there's what they call a max ord, or the max elevation that it can shoot safely to stay out of avionics or airspace. Okay, and that term is called max ord. And you can't bust or you can't shoot up into beyond the max ord. So there's an altitude limit. So what we do is we use propellant charges to push that round to where it's going to go based on the quadrant, which is the up and down motion of the cannon, and the deflection is the left and right movement of the cannon. So you have the quadrant and the deflection. So when we shoot at higher angles, what the round does is it takes a better trajectory and it comes down more straight. So what it does is when the nose or the fuse of the round hits, it detonates at its point detonating on impact, or if it's a time fuse, it'll blow up before. So we can do different things to those munitions, but they solve the problem of the skipper rounds. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't know if you kind of understand that.
To some degree, what I'm hearing is that basically, without lobbing a shell way up into the active airspace regions, you've got that propellant that's keeping it at somewhat of a altitude range, and yeah, okay, so yeah, that makes sense to me.
Right. So there's actually on the website there's a safety T learning. I have some learning objectives on there, and it gives you an example of a artillery safety T, and you can kind of look at that on the website. And I go through and I said, now determine whether or not this fire mission is safe to fire. And I go through and I give an example, and then you got to figure out the next example, whether it's safe to fire. So you do that, and there's
sorry, go ahead.
And stuff. Go ahead. What was your question?
My question was going to be, okay, so you have the altitude limitations based on aviation, but I'm assuming that you could actually increase the range of these rounds if you sort of bled into the avionics altitudes, like that's within the capabilities?
No. Not for rocketry. If you're firing rocketry, yeah, you could, because rockets go up at a higher trajectory. So there's rocket artillery, which is MLRS, and there's cannon tubed artillery, and then infantry uses mortars. So those are basically your heavy, arsenal weapons for indirect. Those are indirect fire. So indirect fire is, I'm not seeing the object that I'm firing at. I'm shooting it up in the air. I can't see it, but I need a forward observer to spot that round on target. Or in the case of rocketry, I'm shooting at a coordinate because I'm shooting way longer distance, but I'm still going to have FOs looking at it in the impact area, because those rounds got to land in the designated impact area. So
before you guys go and shoot, you're assuming that it's a flat, non-rotating Earth.
What does that say, number 3?
Yeah, I see the no rotation of the Earth, and then the number 1 was pretty much the same altitude. So they're not taking in account for any Earth curvature.
No Coriolis effect.
I wonder why that is.
You know why they can do the datum plane thing, the same altitude? Because when the round comes down, If you're shooting over a hill or whatever, a little valley or whatever, that round's going to come down pretty straight. So it's going to impact what elevation it's at. Then you'll adjust. So what you do is your first, what's called a fire mission for artillery, they call it a fire for effect, or adjust fire. And then they'll do an adjust fire, and you might shoot 3 rounds to adjust to hit a target. And once you're close to that target, they're going to say fire for effect. And that's when the rest of the cannons, they'll start firing in. Because then you're basically, you start what they call bracketing. And I use this kind of a little bit in here. You start bracketing a target. Once I start bracketing you, I've got you zeroed in. You ain't got much time left because I've got your range and I've got your location.
Okay, so let me.
I was just going to say the globe earthers tend to say that snipers figure in the Coriolis effect.
That's what I was just going to say.
That our artillery, you know, that would be even more pronounced because the longer range. But of course, I'm assuming that Coriolis effect is not in any of your calculations.
Yeah. Do you see it on this table? This is corps. This is corps, brigade, and battalion artillery right here. This is the TC's 3-09-81. All artillery, U.S. artillery.
If that's and according that to document alone, that document alone is just like worth it all. Your whole presentation, just seeing this one document.
Okay, now, so what I want you to do is now, what does that stay up on the top of the document? It says standard conditions, right? You shoot standard conditions 100% of the time. Now I want you to look in the bottom left-hand corner. What does that say?
Non-standard rotation of Earth never applied. Yeah, that's a problem.
So here's the thing: when I went through and I looked at artillery, I'm going to show you something else. So this is a range fan. This is what we call an artillery range fan. So when you look at, and this is a howitzer, this is a 105. For primary direction of fire, in artillery, you look at the circle there, we use what's called mils. So there are 400 mils in a 360-degree circle, okay? So we use mils as the increment of measurement. So there's 17.8 mils to 1 degree. And there in the circle, you'll have your degrees and your headings and all that, okay? Just put that for reference. Now, this is the other document that I used when I looked at, I'm going to look at military science and see how heliocentrism, they try to enter military science, but military science identifies it and basically sets it to the side. It recognizes it, but it puts it in a condition where it's non-usable. It's just window dressing is all it is. So in the red there, I have, this has been used, table I and ATP 3-0922. Earth's curve for +1 mil beyond 400 mils and for +1 beyond 3,000 mils. Now, these are the left and right limits of that cannon. What you see, that artillery piece there, that little green artillery cannon piece. Mm-hmm. If you look, center line deflection is 3,200. That's straight out. That's 90 degrees going out from that cannon. I can shift 200 mils to the left or 200 mils to the right. Now look at what I got. Let's go to the left limit first. What does my left limit say?
Deflection 3,400.
Okay, now go into the red writing where it says Earth's curve is 1 mil for beyond 400 mils. What does that mean?
Earth's curve is
1 mil for beyond
beyond 300 mils. Okay.
So you never take Earth curve into account.
So that's what they did. They listed it because here's what happens. And you look at for the right deflection, it goes beyond 3,000 mils. That cannon can only shift that. So we have to physically shift the weapon, and the weapon has to be relayed. It has to. There's going to be a 1 to 10 mil displacement. And then you have to go on to your other firing data, your other aiming data. I won't get into that because it's a little more technical. But here again, they've set it beyond. This is very clever. Whoever did this.
Yeah. I was going to say, clever. So like if you're a globe Earth proponent that doesn't really know what he's looking at, you could point to this document and say, oh, look, Earth curve, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Hey,
look,
Corey. So
Hey,
I have Baller Bob here wants to ask you a question really quick. So hang on just a second. Here's Baller Bob. Yeah, Corey. I was wondering if you could tell me, do you miss a lot of your targets? I'm sorry, I just had to do that.
Hey, the only target I didn't miss was this presentation.
I was just doing a little Baller Dave homage there, because that's typically what I would expect out of a baller,
Yeah.
That is interesting that they put that in there, though, because it's almost as if
it's window dressing. Is
Yeah.
what it is. It's so okay. See, heliocentrism. They mention it. There's also some stuff in the survey manual, and I won't get into the survey manual, but it's artillery survey. Basically does the same thing. So they put it in a non-usable, in other words, it's just window dressing. In every instance where you see it, and I looked at it, I was like, well, that don't work because you have to physically shift the weapon. Now you can shift that weapon, you can fire 6-400 mils, but you have to physically shift it because then if you're going beyond 300, 400, or 3,000, you have to physically shift that weapon.
Right.
Now, did that
How
answer?
far are you shooting with these weapons?
So this is a 119. So this thing will shoot right around 11 to 12 miles. This is a 105. Now you can shoot. I think you can shoot with extended munitions about 15 miles. And some of this stuff, all this stuff you can find online. This is a 105. Now, standard artillery, U.S. artillery is 105, which is we call them the little pop guns, and then the 155, which are the medium, they're medium artillery. And then the heavy artillery was replaced. They used to be the 8-inch, the big cannons. They replaced those with rocket launchers. They're MLRS or HIMARS. So they have two versions, and they shoot rockets, or they shoot what they call spills out. And those things can shoot a long way. They can shoot 30,000 kilometers. 155 can shoot 30,000 kilometers. So
excellent. Well, that's outstanding. Okay. Well, I think we probably got those
30,000 kilometers. Wait, 30,000 kilometers, that's like halfway around the globe or more, right?
No. No. Just do your conversion, Cam. Most of your artillery.
Did you mean to say 30 kilometers and not 30,000 kilometers?
30, yeah.
Okay,
30, yeah. So you're looking at right around 22 miles, I think it's
okay. That's more like it, because John was right. Technically, that's halfway around the globe.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to shoot anywhere from there. And that's most of your medium artillery. Your heavy rockets, they'll shoot. They got ATACMs that can go out, I think, 70 plus miles.
Yeah. So. That's absolutely amazing. That in and of itself is, it's just another affirmation of all these other government documents that we have had that, talk about the standard non-rotating flat Earth. It's replete. It's everywhere. And
if you didn't know it, Bob, if you were just somebody that, and I see it all the time, it's like, oh yeah. Like I had this guy, he was telling me this drill sergeant was talking about, well, yeah, and you shoot because of the Earth's curvature, and I'm like, dude, you are so far off.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. When they're teaching this, surely somebody has to come up and ask the question, well, what about Coriolis? What, and if so, what do they say in response to that?
So here's where you're going to separate the cream from the rest of the crop, basically. You're going to get into you're going to see, and you have this in all facets of all jobs. You have your people that really excel and are very knowledgeable. And then you have your people that are in the middle rotors, and then you have the people that are just kind of there, just kind of hanging on. Same thing kind of in the military, same thing in defense contracting. I saw it time and again. And I saw products coming out of college, coming into defense contracting, out of the military. So you see all levels. Okay, so there's no, and the big thing there is the government, the U.S. military and the government. Once they find out you're very good at what you do and it becomes very obvious, they are going to use you. And they are going to use you to a great extent. As much, they're going to ride that horse.
Right.
And you got some people that are really and a lot of times those are your master gunners and your higher proficient non-commissioned, and even your commissioned officers, your staff officers. You have some really good staff officers. They get used. And I'll give you an example. When I was working at Udari Range Complex, I got there. I designed what was called a range tech handbook. It took me about 30 or 40 days to write it when I first got there. Put it out. The master gunner there at Udari Range looked at it. He looked at me and said, "Man, this is really good." He goes, "I got a project for you." I'm like, "What?" And my manager come to me and said, "Hey, we want you to do all the SOPs like this for all the ranges." And I said, "That's going to take 9 months."
Wow.
And they said, "Do it. You're going to have your own desk. You start there. When you come in the morning, this is where you come. From now on,
Wow. So you set the standard for that, then. That is incredible, Corey.
So they pull you once they identify, and it's not just me. There are other individuals in there. You'll see it even in your companies that you work for. There are people that are extremely knowledgeable and are very effective, and efficient. And once they learn that you can write or that you can do a specific skill, we're going to use you. We'll put you to work.
Something that's interesting, if you look in one of I think it was the Marines handbook for snipers, they do factor in the Coriolis effect, but it's something entirely different than what you're led to believe. It's another one of these sort of red herrings, I think. But what it is basically, a Coriolis effect applies to rotating objects, right? And the rotating object in this is the bullet, not the earth. And the way that it deflects is always to the right, regardless of the direction of fire. So whether you're firing north, east, west, south, doesn't matter. It's going to deflect to the right, as long as you're in the northern hemisphere.
So here's what I'll tell you with that. And you got to look at the weapon that you're firing it. Is it rifled? Is it straight?
Yeah, I was going to say it would depend on the direction of the rifling.
Yeah, if your rifling is right twist, which a lot of them are, you're going to have you're going to have a bullet that spins out right twist.
Exactly.
Again, you got to be at a certain level to identify, because people are just going to throw that stuff out. And I'll use an example. Like I was watching TV. I watched Pat McAfee show. They were doing a thing on. Did you know Aaron Rodgers mentioned flat Earth? Did anybody see that?
No.
He mentioned flat Earth. Because they're on him about his vaccine.
Mocking it?
He wasn't
mocking it?
Yeah. So he got what he said, he got immunized. So he got a different medical treatment. But now he's got COVID, and now they found out he wasn't vaccinated. So he came on the Pat McAfee show to talk about it. And he said, "Well, I'm not one of those anti-vaxxer flat earthers."
Jeez.
I was like, oh, man. I was like, I need to talk to you, Aaron.
Yeah, they never miss a chance, do they?
That's funny. You thought you needed to talk to him. I thought I needed to kick him in the face. So,
and it's. I think Aaron. I could see Aaron as a flat. Aaron's an intelligent guy. Aaron reads a lot of stuff. It's just Aaron's. It's a lot of times it's the crowd you're in or where you're at.
Right, and I think a lot of people. Like Joe Rogan, a little bit much like him. So if Joe Rogan says flat Earth is ridiculous, I think he thinks that as well.
Yeah, well, because he got his medication, I guess, from Rogan. He got what he was supposed to. He took through Rogan. Yeah, but it was interesting. I was watching the McAfee show, and they were talking about space, and then they started talking about rockets, and they can do this and investment, and I'm like, dude. I'm like, you're talking about this on a sports show, they're throwing it out there. And I'm like, did you ever stop and think to figure out the 3 things a rocket needs to operate? What are the 3 main things a rocket needs to operate? It needs lift, fuel and thrust, and it needs what else? It needs one main thing. What does it need?
Explosive?
Matter to push off of.
No, that's thrust. Starts with an A and ends with a spear.
I was going to say drag. but no.
Atmosphere.
There you go. It
Yeah.
needs atmosphere. What ain't
Yes.
you got? As the higher you go up, guess where the atmosphere is going?
It goes away. It goes away. And believe me, I've made that point
Right,
a million
exactly.
times,
Right.
Corey. There is no way a rocket engine can work in a
I
vacuum.
talked to one guy about that, and it shocked him because then he was like, I never thought about that. And I was like, you might want to think about that because there's a thing called a vacuum up there. He goes, Gil, I never thought about that.
Yeah. No, and they will try and convince us. They will try and tell people that, effectively what's happening is an effect called recoil, right? That's propelling that rocket, which is nonsense. It's utter complete garbage.
That's like I always tell. I say, okay, I'm going to show you an example. You're sitting in a chair. Come on over here, walk over here. So I have him walk over to the other side of the room. Okay. What are you pushing off? You're pushing off the floor. You're pushing off something, right? I said, now go sit back in your chair. Now lift up your feet. Okay, now come here. You ain't going nowhere.
Well, if you push a weight away from you, then you're still pushing against something. But when you have nothing to push off of, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and then they talk about, you see this stuff about parachutes, parachute stuff on Mars. And I'm like, dude, I jumped out of airplanes for quite a few years. And I said, 1/3 atmosphere in a parachute, you're going to burn in, dude. You're going to burn in. I don't care. 1/3 atmosphere, that's not going to fill up a parachute. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like pick yourself up by the bootstraps and then, yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, all right, where were we, Bob? Get us back on track, unless we've got some more questions.
Nope. I think
I just
we can
have
go.
one more quick question about what we were talking about. When you shoot
Sure.
11 miles, how long is that projectile in the air?
So here's how that depends. If I'm shooting max range, I'm going to shoot about a quadrant of about 400, and I'm going to shoot max charge, which is about a charge 7 for a little 105 gun. So I tell you what's really kind of fun to hear is and I'll use 155 artillery uses what they call wrap rounds or rocket assisted rounds. So you'll fire that thing, and that recoil, that 155 will go back almost 6-7 feet. And that thing will rock. And I mean, you got ear protection, that thing will hurt your feelings when it fires.
Wow.
So you'll hear that thing go out, and you'll wait, and you'll count to about 10 or 12, and then 10 or 12 seconds, and then all of a sudden you'll hear brrr, way off in the distance, you'll hear the rocket kick in. And that rocket will boost that munition an extra 4 or 5 miles. And again, they have different munitions that they can boost out extra distance, what they call them wrap rounds. So, and they've got something else now. There's another technology out. It's other than a wrap round, but it's really neat because you can hear the rockets kick in, and they'll stay in the air over 20 plus seconds.
So yeah, no chance of Coriolis effect at all taking place. I mean, you wouldn't hit anything ever.
So the biggest thing for that would be like if you're shooting a high angle mission, when you shoot high angle, and you can do what's called a coordinated illume. A coordinated illume mission is the gun is going to fire 2 rounds. It's going to fire the artillery projectile, and then it's going to fire the illumination round. And what will happen is the illumination round is going to open up and it's going to burst, and that's going to shoot like a flare out. It's going to parachute down on a flare, and that HE round is going to come down right behind it, and it's going to land so that area is illuminated so they can see the effects on target. And that's a coordinated illume. Now those missions will take the longest, and those will take up over like 30 plus seconds, 32, 33 seconds.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and back up and get back to, back on course here, because, I think what everybody wants to know is how this all comes together with, putting the sun in a box, and what exactly does it tell us? And that's what I think is really, something that everybody wants to know. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the basic examples, and I kind of use the high sun as evidence of flat Earth. And I want you to think about something when you look at these. There's a separating line. In other words, at 46 degrees or higher, at certain times of the day, during certain sun seasons, okay, and I'm going to talk about that the sun
the sun that is 46 degrees or more, and this is based on, again, location, you have to take that in consideration, that if the sun is that high in the sky, you're looking at that from a flat surface, not a curved surface. Why? Because you've exceeded the heliocentric model's limit for line of parallel. In other words, I'm going to use line of parallel. In other words, line of parallel is basically you're setting a grid pattern in the sky, and it's based on surface angle. Okay, so we got to consider surface angle. Again, what the heliocentric model lacks, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, is it lacks accountability. Now, they'll use a lot of equations, and there's some stuff here we probably won't get to, but they've basically used equations. They've went away from geometry, but they got to come back because they got to use geometry to show their diagram. So
I was going to say it lacks balls, but
no. So they've got to go back, and geometry ties in what the reality, what we see. In other words, when you get the design for your layout from your house, they're using geometry basically to design or architect your house. Same thing if you're building a road or you're doing any type of construction or any type of work. You got to use geometry. Same thing in the military. We use military science. We use geometry. You got to use it because it ties in the real reality, the real world. You can't get away from it. And when Einstein, when he went off and he said, I don't believe we can prove the Earth is moving from any optical, that was a white flag. That's it, dude. You basically surrendered.
Yeah, and it was also bullshit because he knew full well that Michelson-Gale could prove that. Morley, and Michelson-Gale. And that's why he had to abolish the ether.
Yeah. So what he was saying is basically, look, we don't want you believing what you see. How many of you been in I'm going to put this question in the panel. How many of you been in an earthquake?
Not me.
No.
Anybody?
Me? I have.
Many times.
Yeah.
Can you feel the earth move?
You feel not so much. I mean, I guess you more feel.
Have you ever felt the earth move from an earthquake? Is what I'm asking.
The earth.
I did one time. It felt like Jello, and this was in actually in North Carolina, so it was a fluke, but it felt like Jello under my couch.
Okay, yeah. I've been in about a dozen of them. In Afghanistan has a lot. They have a lot of them, and some of them feel like that Jello. Some of them feel like you're on a boat, kind of. They kind of roll.
Right, they're like a sway.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, look, when the earth moves in a section or wherever, what piece, you're gonna feel it. So if you're moving at 1,000 miles at the equator, you're gonna feel something. I still can't figure that one out because I'm
us either, Corey. I mean, it's blatantly obvious. You are going to feel something, and even if your vestibular system couldn't feel it, our instrumentation should absolutely be able to measure it.
Seismometers. That's why I was like, seismometer. Okay, so if you say the Earth is moving, what's the seismometer reading? Well, that thing looks pretty quiet over there. for moving as fast as, and that's why I was saying, why don't they ever bring that up? The seismometer, and that's good you brought it up about, because I always thought that same thing. I'm like, those seismometers ought to be going off the charts.
Yep, seismometer. Well, they're just essentially accelerometers, and as you know, I learned a lot about accelerometers over the last 5 years. And if there's one thing I understand about accelerometers is they are accurate and up to 10 to the 12th. I mean, they are unbelievably accurate.
Yeah. You drop your keys on the floor, they'll feel it.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm saying is, let's go back to this 46 degrees or more. You're looking at that sun from a flat surface, and 45 and below, you could be at a flat or you could be at a curve. A curve could come into play. In other words, both models, the geocentric and heliocentric model, fit that area. Okay, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when we get into the dividing line. We're going to talk about the test box, the 45-degree sector test box. Now let's talk about the considerations, the time. This is we need to know when to look at that sun and say, yeah, that sun is too high in the sky to be coming off of a curved surface. other than an arbitrary, just arbitrary. And this is, I see some, people doing measurement stuff with, the moon and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you setting your geometric edge? Do you know how to set the edge? This is important. You need to set the geometric edge. And that, again, when you talk this lingo to the heliocentrists, they're like, huh, what? And I know the flat earthers, there'll be some of them be like, yeah, explain it to me. You got to, you need, the reason that you need to set the geometric edge is you want a clean angle. In other words, you don't want to enter another angle to your measurement. So in other words, observer position to that object, you the observer, is critical on alignment. So I need to, and how we're going to do that, I'm going to show you how to set in a sun survey point. And that is key. That alone, that process sets the correct Earth to Sun to observer alignment. From there, then you make your measurements. Then you take your angles at specified times. 3 hours prior to sun survey time and 3 hours after sun survey time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So timing is critical. Sun seasons, okay? The sun seasons. You got 4 main seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. When we test these models, when we look at it, both these models have to test they have to pass not just from one area, but they got to pass from all areas. So it's not just hey, I was up in Canada, I did your test, and I got 25 degrees of the sun. The earth is curved. We're good to go. Well, yeah, because you got distance, okay? That's observer location and the season where the sun is at, okay? So we need to know the effects. Okay, that's really critical. The hardest sun season time for the globe is going to be late spring, summer, and early fall. Why? Is when that sun is up closer to us in the northern hemisphere. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we need to know that. We need to identify that. We need to understand that. Okay.
Is there, if I kind of summarize what you're saying here? So when you're doing this 3 hour measurement, when you're it's 15 degrees, I guess you'd be, isn't that correct? Could it be 45 degrees because it's 15?
Yeah, I'm gonna break that down. For just.
So
okay?
why is it that on the flat surface it would be 46? It could be higher than 46, but on the curved it could not be more than 45.
About that, let me get through this. I'm going to explain it. All right, I promise you'll understand it. Bob got it yesterday. Like a click. Once you kind of understand it, it takes a little bit, but once you understand it, it's like it clicks. It's like, okay, I understand. I got it now. You're going to need to understand the range fan. Okay, and I'm going to talk to you about a range fan. This is accountability. See, the heliocentric model, they don't like accountability in their model. But now we're going to hold them accountable. This test holds both models accountable. In other words, you can't bullshit. It's going to show up. Now, you talk the talk. Now you got to walk the walk. We're going to find out real quick in 3 hours' time. So now, observer location, how close you are as far as inside or outside the prime meridian zone. Are you testing outside the prime meridian zone? Are you testing inside? Inside the prime meridian zone, you're going to be what? You're going to be closer to the sun, okay? So what? Your sun angles are going to be higher because Mr. Sun is right there, right in that zone. Outside, you're going to have a lower sun angle. Why? Because you're farther away from it. Okay, so we need to understand that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. High altitude. Altitude plays a key. The higher in altitude you are, the lower your sun angle is going to be when you measure it. Sea level is the closest to the natural geometric form of the Earth. Okay, sea level. 0 degrees or sea level. Okay, that's closest. Ideally, that's where we'd want to be, but we can't be at sea level all the time. So we need to understand the effects when we take the measurement. We making sense so far? How we doing?
I know where you're going with it. And Ben, are you following it? Do you understand? Do you understand?
I'm following along. I was hoping to, so that others can understand where he is going. I'm waiting for him to go a little further.
Yeah.
But as I understand it,
what I'm doing is
the reason why is because the globe requires that has the limitation is 45 degrees based on the angle on the globe. But with the flat Earth, because it's on a flat surface, it can go much further than 45 degrees.
You're going to see that. I'm going to show you that. It's going to be real. It's going to be crystal clear to you. I promise. Okay.
My question, real quick, if it's okay, would be when you mentioned prime meridian zone. In my head, I'm thinking equator and tropical zone, but you said prime meridian, so I don't understand how the prime meridian would affect this.
So the prime meridian zone, I call that the tropic. So the tropic of Cancer in the north, all the way through the equator, all the way to the tropic of Capricorn in the south. So that's the sun's main operating zone. Okay.
Okay. So and what they did, John, that's very good, because what they did was they changed the terminology between people talking about it, so it meant the exact opposite. You would think of the prime meridian zone again running in an up and down direction, going around, instead of the way that they're doing it horizontally. And that happens a lot between the sciences and the tech. So it's meant so when he explains it to confuse. That was a brilliant place to stop it.
Good question. Good question. Okay. And then of course, altitude, and then we talked about sea level. Okay. So those are considerations, okay? Things we need to be observant, we need to be aware of when we conduct the test, okay? So here's another example I use, and that's just a 2-story house. If you see that during a certain time, whether it's 9 to 10 in the morning or 3 to 4 p.m. during your early fall, summer, and late spring, that's going to be flatter curve. But if you see it up in the 2nd-story window, higher angle, you're looking at it from a flat surface. We're going to get into that. One thing I want to show you here, and this is an example from a heliocentrist off of Coriolis, okay? And this guy, I'm going to talk about, because we're going to talk a little bit about geometry, okay? So we're going to kind of flow in this. I forgot about the question that you asked, so we're going to clear that up, okay? So this example kind of plays right into geometry and how we understand it and what we need to know. So now we have a diagram. Here's a heliocentric. He said, I cannot see how the Earth can be flat, okay? And he was using this equation. And this guy, he was using Polaris. And I said, okay, all right. We got a guide angle. I said, for one thing, we got a guide angle.
He's also using the wrong perspective on it. He's not using a first person's perspective. He's using a perspective of what's the side angle view? I forget what that's called. I had an orthographic view, right? Yeah, he's using an orthographic view. We don't see like that. That's a problem.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and people don't understand about a guide angle. Okay, you got that object. It's 90 degrees. We can use the sun as well. We can look at both of the sun and Polaris from all directions. It's a forward angle, okay? From all directions, meaning I can have somebody in the south, the east, the west, and north across the expanse of land, and Polaris is going to be in front of me. In other words, I can get forward angles on it. So I know that object is at 90 degrees to the surface of the Earth. It's between all observers. Do we understand that? Any questions on that? That is the guide angle.
Yes, it would be 90 degrees if you're at the North Pole.
Right, if you're right up underneath it, okay? Meaning I can get perfectly vertical to that object. I don't care where it's at up there, but I can get vertical to it, okay? Don't need to, because I'm going to look right at it. When I take my measurement, I'm going to align myself right on it. So Polaris is a little bit different when we measure angles versus the sun. I'm going to talk about the difference in a little bit. But I just want to identify, this is a guide angle. It's like a flagpole. Think about a flagpole where it sits up and you got the little ball on top of the flagpole, or they used to have eagles on them. So I want you to kind of think about that and use that as the example when I talk about guide angles, okay? Because I'm going to use some of these terminology. So now what I want you to do, he used observations, and I'm thinking, okay, this guy didn't actually do the experiment. All he's doing is math because he did an equation. And I looked at it and I said, okay, he's got 2 observations, you did that. I said, okay. So I wrote him back and I said, information requirements. I said, nice equation. Now fill in the real information. There are some subtle hints in the Sun diagram I provided. There's a big difference between chalkboard equations and reality. In the Sun diagram I provided is down below. But now let's talk about the information requirements, what he left out, okay? Because we need to know these things. The actual known distance between points, didn't want to talk about that. Why? They don't want to use triangulation to talk distance on what? Celestial bodies, okay? They don't like doing that. That's one thing I found out about heliocentrists. They don't like doing that. They like to use equations and like to use their own little tricky math.
Yeah, the one time they did that, we burned them bad on it, and that was the Reg Rhetoric piece that I showed you yesterday.
Yeah. So latitude. What was your latitude at your stations are at? Now, his first station there, where he says under his name is David, he said that was in Canada, and then the other one was in Cuba when I pinned him down. And I said, okay. I said, Canada. I said, you're going to have a hard time. Because I said, you're going to be about 46 degrees, 45 degrees, somewhere right around there up where you're up in Canada. That's going to leave you 44 measurable degrees to get to line of parallel. And I'm going to mention line of parallel because now when we talk about Polaris or the sun, we're talking supposedly very large objects in the sky that are greater than the Earth, okay? So we can use line of parallel to determine whether or not we're viewing it from a flat surface or a curved surface. There's a trick to it, and I'm going to show you that. So if we look down at this sun diagram, I want you to look on the right side. You'll see the 90-degree red line. Everybody see that with the sun? And we can use that as a star, same thing.
Yep.
The second red line is line of parallel. Now that object, you'll see a 45-degree line going to that sun or that star. We can call it the same thing, okay? And we'll just say, well, that's Polaris, okay? On a globe model, you must understand, if you are using that model, you have to understand line of parallel, because line of parallel will burn you. If you exceed it, you have to, in other words, line of parallel, this observer has an angle of 45 degrees. In other words, he or she is oriented at that sun at 45 degrees. That's what they're starting out at. You have to use the observer angle. You can't get away from it. It has to be in your computation. And then your measurable angle to line of parallel is only 45 degrees. You're limited out at line of, because once you reach line of parallel, their next step is you have to check the range fan. And doing the range fan, we'll talk a little bit about it, but you got to take the object's believable or its said size at said distance, and you're going to plug that in the range fan. And then you can determine whether you can exceed line of parallel, or if you have to stay within line of parallel. If you exceed it, you are on a flat surface. You are not on a curved surface.
Yes.
Did we kind of follow that? So
I do.
We'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so this is kind of your first talk through. Okay, we're going to hit it again, but that's how line of parallel works. That's why it's so critical.
At 45 degrees, you can't see over 45 degrees into the sky, or else you're above that.
Yeah, well, you have to consider you are the observer. You're oriented on the globe. At
an angle already.
Yeah, you're already at an angle. So here's what I want you to do. Use this example. Think of you can use 2 examples. You can use your I'll use the windshield of your car. Say you get in your car, right? And you sit upright in your car and you're looking straight out the windshield, right? You're basically looking at 90 degrees, okay? What I want you to do is you take and you draw an object on your windshield straight in front of you, okay? Now, you're on a 90-degree flat surface. You're looking straight at it, okay? Now what I want you to do is I want you to recline your chair back. And what happens to that object as you recline back? Does it go up? Does it go down? Or what does it do?
It goes down.
Go down.
It goes down. That object goes down. Okay, so that's, just remember that same thing. If you're watching your TV in your living room and you're sitting in your recliner chair and you're looking at it, now you may be looking at it at a little bit of an angle. Look straight at it and then recline your chair back. Okay, you do the same thing. That TV is going to go down the farther you recline back. That is the observer angle. You are orienting yourself at a different angle. So surface angle must be considered. You cannot just say, well, we don't figure that in. And that's when that one question, Bob, that guy, you have to consider. It has to be part of the equation.
So what do you mean by cannot exceed that angle? I don't understand, but exceed it how?
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the range fan, okay?
Okay, got it.
Because, and it might be a good time to do it right now. So,
okay.
Do you want to do the range fan now?
Sure.
Okay, so now we're at line. We have to determine if this object is, we want to determine if okay, you're telling me I'm on a curved surface and now remember, I'm looking directly center mass of this object. This object is larger than what I'm on. So now I have two straight lines running parallel straight into it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Right here, this is probably the best slide. I'm going to explain the fan. So here in this diagram, now line of parallel, you see the two black arrows going into the sun, right? Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
That is line of parallel. That object, the survey point, your line of parallel. You have line of parallel of the observer. Okay. Those are just, I just want you to know, those are lines of parallel. Okay. Those two black arrows. The red arrow is the observer oriented, okay, at 0 degrees, at 45 degrees. Now, they are actually measuring right now at 0 degrees. They will move their arrow, the red arrow moves to the other black arrow, they will be what? 90 degrees.
90 degrees, yes.
Line of parallel, okay? Now, once you're at line of parallel, we need to determine whether or not that object, that said object, at said size, at said distance, if I can exceed line of parallel. So what I want you, I'm going to use the example, Bob measures 46 degrees to the sun, okay? So this is, I want you to look at the simple math. The measured angle on the right side is 46 degrees measured angle, okay? So Bob does a sun angle measurement at 46 degrees at the sun survey point.
That's position 1?
Okay.
Position 1, you mean?
Huh?
Is that at position 1 or position 2?
The position 2. So he comes up and he is now line of parallel. Okay. So position 1 and position 2, I don't want you to get, because this is, you can do this from one observer or two observers, either a simo or multiple observers. And it works either way. Doesn't matter. This can be an easterly or westerly. Okay, so I just
wanted to know, I wanted to understand which one you were talking about. So at 2,
okay,
gotcha.
It's 2. Yeah, so 2.
Okay.
So the red arrow is the measured angle to the sun from the observer. So they measured, okay, they're going to measure 46. So at 46 degrees, they are now the green arrow. They've exceeded line of parallel. Okay, you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So they measured, so 45. At 45, they're at line of parallel. They're at the black arrow. They go one more degree over line of parallel because it's 46 degrees. Remember, Bob is oriented at 45 degrees on the surface.
Oh, wait. So, okay. So the red line is actually 0, not 45. That's where I was looking at it wrong. I totally got you. Okay. Follow.
Yes. Okay. So that's actually at 0. So he has a measurable for the globe model. He has another 45 to work with before he gets the line of parallel. Okay, tracking? We're good? Everybody following? Okay, now at 91 degrees, it's flat. Why? Why is it flat? Okay, we're going to show you why it's flat. So here, we need to look at some figures for the heliocentric model. Now at 1 degree, I want you to see that circled red area. It says 1 degree, we're 1,638,664 miles. That is our fan. That is our distance between the green arrow and the line of parallel black arrow. That is the distance. That is the fan at 1 degree at 93,879,000 miles. So how do I do that? What's the, let me see here. So if I can escape this, I'm going to escape this. I'm going to go to, we go to righttrianglecalculator.net. Everybody see that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to, in angle A, I'm going to put in 2 figures. I'm going to clear out all my fields. I'm going to put in 2 figures. Angle A, which is 1 degree. How many degrees you exceeded line of parallel? We're going to check. So we're going to put in 1 degree. We exceeded it by 1 degree. Now we need to put in the said distance. In the military, this is the same thing the military does. If you're telling me that this range is X amount of miles by X amount of miles wide, we need to check the fan, the weapons fan.
Right. And I want everybody to understand, Corey, that this distance is what the mainstream, this is what science tells us the sun distance is, right? And this is what we are falsifying, and we are killing it by doing this.
Yeah. So here at that time of season, they say that the sun is right around 93 million miles away from us. Okay. So we put in those 2 pieces of information in B, which is going to be our distant leg. That's how far out we're going as far as distance. What they say the distance to the object is. Okay. We tracking? We good?
Yep.
We have angle and we have distance to the object, B. And now we're going to hit calculate. Now we get calculate. We need to look at A. A is going to give us our answer. And what does A read, Bob?
1,638,664.0404 miles.
Okay. So that's how we got that 1 million miles. Everybody see how we got that?
Mm-hmm.
Tracking?
Yes.
Okay. That's how we figure the fan. So that fan is the green arrow from the black arrow. That's how far you're off line of parallel. This is why you cannot, and on certain objects now, on the heliocentric model, you could go probably to 90.3 degrees or 0.4, and you'd be pretty close. I'd say, you know what? We could be on a curve. I give it to you.
Yeah, and mind you guys, the sun is only 0.52 degrees in the sky. So there's a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
A big one.
And they claim only 800,000 miles in actual size is what they claim as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Sort of margin from center. Yeah.
So here's what we're looking at. Okay, now we got that 1 degree figure. What do we bump that against? Remember, we're shooting the sun at center mass. We're aiming center mass. So we're looking at radius, or I call it half sun, which is 482,000 miles. Is this figure bigger or larger than my 1 degree figure?
Larger.
It's, I'm sorry, larger or smaller?
Smaller, yeah.
I said bigger or larger. Yeah. Ooh, what choice?
So you're right. That would be smaller. Derp.
So it is smaller.
It's be smaller, yes.
In other words, the sun is smaller than our fan. That radius is smaller than our fan. We've exceeded that limit for the heliocentric model. You are now in an unsafe limit. In other words, that model has went into geometric failure. Do we understand that?
Yes,
That's
by a factor of 2.
Geometric failure.
By a factor of 2, right? Because the sun is only 865,000 miles in diameter.
Yeah,
so it's way off.
Remember, this is only 1 degree. I was getting 5, 6, 7 degrees. In North Carolina, I got 7.2. That's over 10 million.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we give a real world example? So like the sun is 90 degrees over a given area, and then you have an observation of like, where is the other location? Like how far away is it? What is the actual elevation angle?
I'm going to explain that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to get you through to understand the range fan. So I want to show you, do we understand how that works now? Do we understand how the range fan line of parallel? How does line of parallel work? Because we've got a larger celestial object, supposedly, that's larger than the Earth. So we're going to use line of parallel to verify it. Okay, we're going to check. We're going to check your stuff. And that's how you check.
Yeah, it's more like use line of parallel
right at midday, right? This is at the when the sun's at its highest. when you're taking this measurement? It's always above,
we're going to talk about
45
that.
degrees.
We're going to talk about that. So when you actually measure, but we got into talking about the fan, so I wanted to go through and show you how you get the fan. Now I'm going to show you. I just want to know, is there any more questions on the fan, and then we'll go into the other stuff.
Nope.
Are
nope.
we
And sorry guys that we're jumping all over the place, but you know, everybody's got a question and we're all seeing different parts of it at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're good though.
Yeah.
So do we
Could you cover and do it? I did it in the chat, but for other people that didn't, when you're talking mils, it's milliradian or milliradian is what I'm looking at. An angular measurement, which is defined as thousandths of a radian. Just to put it in reality, because you're talking mils and people didn't know there were a few different ways to.
So all mils are a finer increment of measurement, and the reason that they're like human hairs basically. So it's about the size of a human hair. Because there are 6/400 of them in a circle. And I'm going to show you the circle. I'm going to give you the demonstration on the circle and how we can exclude atmospheric lensing below 1/8 of a degree. And I'm going to show you how the military does it, okay, in military science. And I'm going to show you how we can exclude that because we're using higher angles. In other words, we're going 15 degrees and above the horizon, above 15 degrees. So we're going to get out of that thick atmospheric zone. We're going to go up into the more thinner zone where we get less interference. In the military, we do that using a lay circle and a safe circle, and they bump. In other words, they have to meet when they measure an angle onto each other. They turn an angle on each other. So we can exclude atmospheric lensing from higher angles. And I'll talk a little bit more about it. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but mils, the reason we got to use those finer increments of measurement is because we're shooting a projectile a long distance. So we have to be very accurate, and we need a finer increment of measurement. And that's all. That's really why it is like that.
Right, because not only that, the further out you get, the
greater
the angle becomes, right?
Right. So this is I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. So if you look at 91 and 90 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the heliocentric model, everything that you think the heliocentric model is a strength, I'm going to use against you. And I'm going to use distance, I'm going to use curvature, I'm going to use timing, I'm going to use the sun, and I'm going to use observer position against you.
Yes, you are.
So I'm going to use that all against you. And the farther out you say your object is, that's going to work against you, buddy. It ain't going to help you. It's going to hurt you, and it's going to be painful.
Yeah, they were better off keeping the sun long ways away from 93 million miles. That really blew it.
So the fan, and all this does is, and I know what some people think, well, we'll just tweak the numbers and then we'll make it work the fan. Don't work like that, partner. Because all this does is identify whether or not you're on a flat or curve. You're taking a measurement from a flat or curved surface.
Right.
An angled surface. That's all this is. Now, this just shows you how bad whoever did their mathematics and all that didn't understand. They either didn't understand line of parallel or they just ignored it, and they hope people wouldn't find out.
Well, I think being as how we haven't found out until now that they were hoping people wouldn't find out, because it is rather obscure and it is rather confusing.
It's a higher knowledge. I call it a higher knowledge, and it's just you're not exposed to it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as an error, this is an 11. This is a showstopper for the heliocentric model. So this exposes it. So again, this is why we need to understand line of parallel and how to use it and how it works. How are we on the panel? We tracking? We good?
I'm tracking. I'm a lot further ahead today than I was yesterday, Corey. I'll put it that way.
And I'll explain it to the rest of the people. If you go through it the first time, it's going to take some time. You might have to go through it 2 or 3 times before all of a sudden, okay, I got it. I understand it now.
Good.
I know how to get to line.
Yeah. Hey, so Corey, let me ask you something. One thing that really helped me was going through your notes on, how you have the notes on the bottom of these slides.
Yeah.
That helped me a lot. Is that something that I could make available to our audience?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you guys, when I put this out there, you will see his slides that he has here, and on the bottom of every slide, he's got the notes, detailing exactly what's going on here. And I think that combined with the oral presentation that he's doing today and the one that he did at Flatoberfest, it will come together. And I have a feeling that Corey will probably also be making himself available in the comments to answer some questions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. If you got questions, no problem. And I think there's one other thing, Bob, I want to talk about. If you look at that little globe or that little ball on the left side, it's got numbers on it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's, when we talk about the 45-degree sector test, in other words, we're breaking the globe down into sectors in order to test it. We're going to do the same thing in the flat Earth model. We break them both down. So you'll see those numbers, and those are 45-degree sectors. We're going to break that down, and we're going to test that chunk. And that's where what we're testing. We're testing a chunk of the Earth's surface. We're testing it for angle to see, hey, they're telling me this is an angle. Is it true or not? And this is why I use the example of the car windshield or sitting in front of your living room chair. Hey, put something up on there. Sit upright and then recline back and see what happens to that object. It drops. When you recline back, when you're at an angle, that object drops. And that's what it's going to do. Now you can come back up and measure to get to line of parallel, but once you get to line of parallel, you have to determine whether you can exceed it, whether it falls within the parameters of that model. And if you're 1 degree, if you're 1 degree past and you're 1 million and your radius width is 482,000, hey, you're out of safe. Your model has now went into geometric failure.
Yep.
So one question I have is where the number 2 is there on the Earth ball in the middle. Mm-hmm. When you show 90 degrees looking straight up, but that person would be looking straight up more in the line of the green line.
So
even more than that.
Yeah. So here's another thing, Jeran. I want you to watch it, and that's a great question. You see the numbers 1 and 2.
Yes.
You can do this from one observer, or you can do it from 2. Now, the one observer will be at the number 2 position. Why? Because that number 2 observer put in his or her sun survey point at that position. Okay? All he or she is doing is transferring that survey. This is why Earth to Sun to observer alignment is critical. This is why you get the alignment. Okay? So all you're doing is you're transferring your survey position. That's all you're doing for STO, which is a solo timed observation. So it's timing. It's timing and then measurement. Okay? So that's a good question. Now, if I have SIMO, if I have 2 observers, and I'll use the example from Mexico, I'll put an observer, my master station will be my number 1 in Mexico. My number 2 observer would be in Hawaii. And then what we do is we do the SIMO. We do exactly what we're doing right now. And I'd have Jeran in Mexico. He puts in the sun survey point there and says, he calls Bob and says, hey, time now, measure time now, sun survey. Take your measurement, clock it, and then do your 3-hour measurement. So what you're going to do is from sun survey point time, you need to mark that time. So if your sun survey time from your position is 12:30, 3 hours from that time is going to be your first reading time. So it's going to be 15:30. I think it's 15:30, 1:30, 2:30. Yeah, 15:30.
No, what Jeran is saying and what we're not addressing, though, is the fact that your observer 2 that's in your second place, their 90 degrees would not be the same 90 degrees as observer 1. Their 90 degrees up would be at a different angle, closer to your 91, but in actuality, a little bit further out. It'd be following the same line going from the center of the Earth.
Same line. Yep. Here's the catch, and I put it in the second slide of the presentation. You have to understand that the sun is always 90 degrees to a person, place, or thing, or object every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every year. 90 degrees. So that's your number 1, no matter what. If you're a solo observer, that's your 90 degrees. If you're a solo observer, you're number 2. You're at the number 2 position. All you're doing is you're determining your line of parallel at 90 degrees. Your timing determines your 45-degree angle, or your basically your position from the sun. Okay.
I guess where we're confused is if you look at number 2, why do you have written down 90 degrees with an arrow pointing straight up if that's not 90 degrees?
That is 90 degrees.
Well, it is because you have to add the 45. You add 45 degrees to it because you've rotated.
Yeah. Now, Jeran, you're oriented from that position to the number 1 position. You're oriented 45 degrees. So that's timing. At 3 hours, you're going to make your measurement. That's the red line. Okay, so now the red line, you're at 45 degrees. That's your start point. You have 45 measurable degrees to get to your other black line of parallel. That's your limit.
Yeah, he wants to keep it parallel. That's the whole thing.
Exactly.
They want to keep them parallel.
Okay, gotcha.
Tracking? We good, Jeran?
Yep.
Good. Now, once we get to 90 degrees, if we go past, we say, oh, I got a 46-degree angle. Then we got to do what? We got to do our rangefinder. We got to do our calculation. So what do? We go into righttrianglecalculator.net, plug in our data. Okay, you're saying this object is this distance, and I'm at 1 degree past line of parallel. I'm 46 degrees. So I put in 1 degree and I do my calculation. It comes out to 1,638,000 and change. Then I look at that number and I look at my radius size, 482,000. Which one's bigger? Which one's smaller? Am I within that sun size? No, I'm not. I've exceeded it. That model now goes into geometric failure. That model has failed the test. Tracking? Good?
Yeah, in order for that model to work, your 45-degree angle would have to be like drawing exactly even between your 1 and your line down the center. And your 1 would have to be in your prime zone.
It would have to be 38 degrees, or it can be 40 degrees. It can be 41, 42. You're still within the limit. You're within the limit of that model. And that's why I said you can't determine, it would be indeterminable whether you're from a curved or flat surface, because both models will pass the test at that. It's when you exceed that line of parallel, 46 degrees and more, that's what separates. That's what separates the models. We understand that? Because we've exceeded line of parallel. Now you're getting into the flat earth only zone. The flat earth model, and I'm going to go to the test box.
Yeah, and there's one other thing also that I want to mention, and you know, Cami actually explained this to me, and it made sense. It helped me a lot. Is that just because we're saying that we have disproved the heliocentric model and we have proven the flat Earth model, it doesn't mean that we have proven the Gleason map, for example. In fact, that fails too.
Yeah, we don't know what the layout. This is only determining geometrics. In other words, geometric angle form. In other words, is it flat or is it curved? That's all this does.
Right, but when you start looking at the angles and the data that they gave us for the Gleason map, then it fails also. And I think, and Cami said, you know, this is why he was looking at the possibility of whether or not this was a simulation, right? And it's like, I get that. And of course, she then explained to you some of the visual optics that she's been working on that hopefully, you know, we'll be able to integrate those variables into this model to bring it back to something closer to the Gleason map. But that helped me a lot when I understood that, because I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's got to disprove the heliocentric model, but somehow it's proving the flat Earth model. And it's like, no. It's proving the flat Earth, but not the Gleason map model.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the flat Earth model. Here's the flat Earth model. If you look at the bottom left, all geometric angular measurements must be 90 degrees and below for the flat Earth model. You're going to make that easy. In other words, that model can work up to, and actually it's going to be around 81.4 degrees, because on the flat Earth model, the sun is smaller. So you're not going to have a line of parallel. It's going to work a little bit different. And that's because the sun is smaller. I have the sun at right around 69.1 miles, and that's based on timing and some calculations. So based on when we look at the geometric angle and measured angle, and that's what I gave that example of that heliocentrist, I said on the flat Earth model, I put the protractor on. I said, well, what angle can't you get to the North Star? That's under 90 degrees. You can't. You can make all angles on a flat surface.
Hey, quick question, and this is on point, but a little bit besides the point. So, assuming that the 69-mile distance to the sun, or let's say the moon, is correct, what would the actual diameter be? Have you gone that deep into the math?
No, I haven't. I haven't gone, and I'm still kind of working on the sun size because I know the 2017 eclipse shadow was right at 70 miles. So if my calculation, I have it at 69.1, it fits within that eclipse shadow size.
Check this out, though. So here's one thing that's really important, and maybe you can do something with this. There's been a couple of eclipses on record, solar eclipses, where the shadow of the moon was like 2 miles in diameter.
Yeah. So here again, location. We have to understand location. So location is going to have something to do with it, because when you use triangulation, you got to look at observer position. So you're going to get, and I'll use this with distance to the sun. That's why I put the sun's distance between 3,000 and 4,000 miles. And I'll show you how we get that distance. But that's the sun's distance from the surface there, and it's based on where you're taking your measurements from. So if you're taking it, the most accurate, if we could get in the prime meridian zone and get right up underneath, that would be the most accurate. But we can't always do that. So that's why we're going to get different figures, because it's observer position.
I measured it from 41 degrees north on the equinox. And I went down to the exact second that they said it was going to cross the equinox, and I came up to 2880.
28 miles?
No, 22,880 miles.
Ooh.
Up.
Distance to the...
What about, have you watched Jay Tolan's latest video about the sun? Have you seen it, Corey?
Are you talking about the one last night, Jeran? Because he just released one last night.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. Tolan's time before that. The one where he was able to measure it based on the mountains.
Oh, okay.
Where he declared basically that it was 3959 miles.
Yes.
Yeah.
3950?
Yeah, well, the 3959 just happens to be the radius of the Earth. And he goes, you're not going to believe this, but the sun appears to be tracking out at 3959 miles above the flat Earth. And this is right in line, by the way, Corey, with, some of the calculations I did. And I kind of came to just blow it off because, we're talking about an apparent position of the sun. And the more you try and hone in on that triangulation, the less accurate it gets. So
Yeah. That's why I said we need to be up under the prime meridian, up underneath that sun, and we could get accurate data.
What my point was, real quick, was that, assuming that the sun and the moon are approximately the same distance and the same actual size, and that's a big assumption, but we'll just assume that, then during a solar eclipse, the shadow of the moon couldn't be any smaller than the actual diameter of the moon, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm going. And so, if the shadow...
Didn't say the radius is that size, John? Not the diameter would be double that. The diameter of the moon shadow, there was 3 eclipses in history, a historical record, where it was like less than 2 miles in diameter.
Oh, diameter. Wow, really?
Yes.
So, John,
and by the way, the 3959 distance to the sun was also what my friend, a civil engineer, Brian S., came up with, NASA Eclipse, the $5,000 NASA Eclipse Challenge. But again, we are dealing with the parent position as well, so I don't necessarily agree with that either.
Yeah. Position has a lot to do with it. So you're going to get different figures. Like I said, to really get accurate data on it, I think that we need to be in the prime meridian zone, get up underneath that sucker.
The other mistake, I think, can we hear me or no? The other mistake that I think that we're going is we're assuming that what we're seeing is a shadow. And if you're working with an electromagnetic model and the pieces and parts we're working with, assuming that the sun is electromagnetic, which I'll give it to it's going to have a polarity field. So what you could be seeing instead of the size of the object is the size of the magnetic field itself, which is going to exceed the size of the object. So if you put those properties to the sun and the moon, you're talking about the shadow size would be the field size, not the physicality size. So
Right. Yeah, gotcha.
Understood.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that could change all the time too.
And that
yeah.
could change all the time. That goes with the angle and very much with Faraday effect and what they're doing with light on that,
But
and how we optically see it.
Yeah,
I still don't think it would be any smaller than the moon, would it? It would necessarily have to be at least the size or larger, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would be larger than it would be. The shadow would be casting. The shadow you'd be casting would be larger than the size, not smaller than. The field would be extend outside.
Gotcha.
And
So
depending
we're
on
still within that at least around 2 miles as the smallest on record for the assuming that it is the shadow of the moon that we're dealing with, which I believe that it is. I mean, I think that is what it is.
Well, I think
or
it's
the field,
right?
right?
The field, which would
or
be
the
just
field.
a little bit bigger. So again, we're
Right.
just honing in on
Exactly.
really closely the same objects. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So are we good? Are we good on when we look at the flat angle, the geometric angle measurement, 90 degrees? Everybody kind of understands that on the flat Earth model. We have full 90.
Yep.
That's basically it's a forward. All you're doing is it's a forward angle. So when we go back to the test box, there's 2 numbers for each model in the test box, and then you'll see the observer angle. In other words, use the observer when we take that test or when we take that measurement. That's the angle the observer is going to be at when they take their measurement. So the globe model, you see 45 and 45. So your surface angle, or the angle that the observer is at, is 45 degrees to that object, to the sun. And we look at the center test box. Center test box, you got 2 red arrows. You got easterly and westerly. You got EOL. What EOL stands for is end of orienting line. In other words, we're shooting basically that's our survey or line of survey at the sun. So we are measuring directly at the sun. That's the end of our line. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that sun, we're going to do its time. So it's 3 hours. It's a time test. So that sun has to clear sector in 3 hours at 40, it clears that 45 degree sector in 3 hours. So that's when we need to take our measurement. That's the top number, what we're allowed. The top number is what we're allowed to take the actual physical measurement. So
jeez, Corey, that is freaking bulletproof. You know that?
So now 45 and 45 is not 90. Both models have a composite total of 90 degrees. This is the test box. All right. So you look at the flat Earth model. You're at what? Your observer angle is at 0 degrees. So what does that give the observer for my top angle? Anybody?
90?
90 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That gets me to not. So who has the advantage? What model has the advantage?
Flat.
You betcha. Because the Earth, the globe model as a sphere is the hardest sphere. The ball, the sphere, is one of the hardest objects, geometric objects, to validate. It's tough. If you had to select a geometric shape, that would be your last geometric shape. That'd be like, oh, I ain't taking that one because that's too hard to validate. You got too many hoops to jump. You got way too many.
That's sort of the beauty of it from the liar or from the deceiver's perspective, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah.
The bigger the lie, the stronger the spell.
And it's propped up by $2 billion industries, science fiction, and you know the other one. All right. So we understand the test box, and you can look at the test box key. Okay. And now when we look at the big test box, you'll see 1 and a 2 on the. So those are one or two observer, either a SIMO or a STO. And again, either one of those observers, you can be a single or you can have 2 observers. It works either way for a SIMO, simultaneous, or from a solo timed observation observer. Same thing. It works both ways for 1 or 2 observers. And the OS, of course, that's the orienting station. Too easy, right? Now, what are those red dotted lines for on the outside of the box? Anybody take a guess?
The parameter between the 2 monitors or 2 models?
Lines of parallel.
Oh, those are the lines of parallel. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Lines
of parallel. Those are your limits. All right. So the U.S. military does this, and when they go to validate a unit, you got to go into the box. In other words, NTC or GRTC, you have to prove your worth, your validate. You have to validate your medal, your mission essential task. In other words, you got to prove yourself in simulations and exercises. So you go into the box. Same concept here. Both models going into the box. But guess what? Only one coming out.
This is so crazy because, you know, I have never been taught geometry in this way before.
How about that?
This is absolutely amazing. And again, it comes with the higher learning that goes with what you do specifically as a master gunner. I mean,
you're not going to get this in the civilian sector.
No,
Right.
this is gold, people. This is freaking gold.
You're not going to get that. And here's one. When I was at the Flattoberfest and I ran into those three guys, and one guy said, he talked to me and said, yeah, he goes, I seen everything on flat Earth. And I said, you ain't seen this.
I believe that.
So
I love it when you see stuff that comes along, and, you know, and I've said that forever. It's like, you never know when somebody's going to walk into your life and provide a point of view that you have never considered before that will absolutely bowl you over. And
okay, so yeah, and I understand this is new. This is, again, the civilian sector is not, I won't say it's not exposed to it, but again,
we're going to keep working it. We're going to keep working it.
It takes a little bit to understand, but I guarantee you, once you understand it, you ain't going to forget it. You'll be like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Oh, check this. I'm going to check the line of parallel on that.
Yes, and it comes with absolute moments of clarity. You know, like last night, that first aha when I was talking to you, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing.
But then it pops in. It takes a little bit. If it's
does.
your first time, I don't expect you to get it all. But if you go through it again and then you look at it, it's like, that's how that works. Okay, I understand how that works. It's like anything else, like how you learn to walk, how you learn to swim, how you learn to ride a bike, how you learn to drive a car. It's repetition, how you got exposed to it.
Yep.
You don't know what you don't know until you learn it.
That's right. That's right. And this is something that we are going to absolutely expand on, Corey. We're definitely going to have you back and, you know, talk about it more, because honestly, I'm anxious to see what the Globers have in their way of debunking this, because from what I can see, and granted, you know, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. There could be some way to do it, but I'm not seeing it right now.
So I tell you what really messes them up. You know what? Out of this whole process, what really messes them up?
What's that?
The sun survey point. Once you put in that sun survey point pins you. It pins you, the observer, to that position. In other words, when I say pinned, you are pinned to that position. In other words, you can only come up so far for your model before you what? You get to line of parallel. Mm-hmm. It's accountability.
Which is 45 degrees 3 hours later.
Yep. So accountability. So I didn't cover this. Your first reading 3 hours after sun. So let's just use 12 o'clock as your sun survey time. So your first reading is going to be at 1500 hours. That's going to be a westerly read. Okay, that's going to be west. The sun's going to be west of you. That's going to be your first reading time. Your next reading time will be 0900 the following morning, an easterly reading time. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, and then you need to have balance, because I know some people, and I know the heliocentrists, they'll try. Well, you know, I did this measurement at 8:30, and then I did the other one at 4 o'clock, and both measurements are below 45 degrees, and the Earth is curved. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You're outside the parameter. You're outside the 3, 4, 5. Remember, 3 hours, 45 degrees. You exceeded that. You're outside, and this pins you. This is accountability, and they don't like that. They don't like.
So let's say it's the equinox. You're on the equator, okay, and you're at position 1 at noon. The sun's 90 degrees overhead, right there, okay. Mm-hmm. And then 3 hours later, you are at position 2, okay. And this is a timed observation. You're going to be the observer at 1, and 3 hours later, you're the observer at 2.
No. You just do a simul. Leave the one observer there, and have Jeran over as observer 2 and say, hey, Jeran, time now, 3 hours.
Right. So I understand you could do it that way, but I guess so we could do it this way too, though, right? And you can do it either way. But so let's just say you're one guy.
You do it from one position. You just do it from one position.
Right.
But if you're one guy, you're the one position. That's it.
Right. Well, right, but it's timed.
Yeah, you're not the 2. So your first read, okay, you put your survey point in at the one position. You're the observer at 1200 hours. You're at the one position.
Right. Yeah.
At 3 o'clock, you're still at the same position. You're going to take a measured angle to the sun. That's your early reading. Now, the following morning, you're going to be at the same one position, and you're going to take an easterly read. You are a stow or a solo timed observer.
Okay.
Both readings from the same position. I don't need.
The point is, the two 90s. And let's say you've got me at 1 and Jeran at 2. I'm on the East Coast. He's on the West Coast. Those 2 are parallel lines.
Well, now if you're going to do that, you have to look at distance in sector. If you're going to do a SIMO, you need to look at distance and now you can do, when you do SIMO, you can do what's called a distance validation. So in other words, you both are going to put in a survey point, the master station, and then the second or the flank observer, okay? And you're going to time that. And as the sun goes, all right? So if the sun at 3 hours is forward of you, okay, that means you're short. All right, I'm sorry, that means you're long. You're long in distance, okay? So in other words, if you took an angle at that, if you measured an angle at that time, being the second observer, you have to measure that angle, okay? And then wait for the sun to get 90 degrees to you as it flanks you. Time that, okay? And then you're going to take that from 90 degrees and take that, whatever, let's say it's 5 degrees, you are 5 degrees over. So you have to, that's a correction. That's a correction factor because you as the observer were out too far out, okay? So you have to use a correction factor. So that's how you do a correction. And I didn't want to kind of get into, it's easier to do a stow because a stow, you're just one observer, time. It's too easy. 3 hours, pop. Because the sun is what? The sun is always 90 degrees. It's always moving 90 degrees. So that line that you see below the sun is always there. Don't matter where you're looking at it. It's always there. And that's what people like, oh, now I get it. I don't really need that second observer.
Yeah. It'll fade in and out a bit at times.
I think I can clarify a little bit of it.
Yeah.
First of all, when you say, can I try to draw a picture of what you said for people and correct me if the picture is wrong? When you say in the meridians, it's going to be between the tropics and you're going to pin the sun. In other words, this is where it physically is overhead. And Bob and I have had the experience in Hawaii before, something called Lahaina noon. We happen to be in Lahaina, so it worked good, but they're all over the island. And a couple of times a year, the sun goes directly overhead of you, and there is no shadow. And it's absolutely fabulous. It's a wonderful experience. We were out on the beach for it, and not only was there no shadow, but I had different glasses with different kinds of water in it. It turned the water into rainbows. It was, again, the most beautiful experience, but that is pinning the sun. That's when it's right overhead and there is no shadow in any direction.
Yes, that's right. You guys were in Hawaii when you did that. That's absolutely right. I remember.
And you guys have seen this on video. Some of you guys have seen it in video and pictures, and that is pinning the sun. That's when the sun is directly overhead. So if you're between the tropics, or what he's calling the meridian, if you're in that tropic zone, a couple of times a year, be it on the equator or anywhere in there, when it passes overhead, it's going to, a couple of times a year, pass directly over your head.
Yeah.
Now, where that line is where you're pinned.
Within that zone. Yeah.
Anywhere within that zone, it's going to happen. Sometimes it's over water, but if you're on land or in a boat where it happens, it's an amazing experience because again, the sun is directly overhead. There are no shadows, and the electricity, everything about the air feels differently when that happens. It's
it's
when they
pretty
talk
weird.
about
That kind of throws people, that understanding that, and that's why I put that in the beginning. One of the beginning slides, I said, look, you got to understand that the sun is 90 degrees to you always. It's always in the tropic zone. It's always 90 degrees. So you always got that parallel line up underneath there.
Now that is in military line speaking, where you're confusing people because you're using instruments and calling 90 degrees even when you're looking at an angle. If you're not right underneath it, you're looking for that degree from north, but it's confusing people because you're not looking straight up overhead.
You're thinking that you have to physically be there, but you don't.
You don't. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there. Once you're outside of that area, you have to compensate for how much you're outside of the area and what you're looking for wherever it's pinned.
That's why you do timing. That's why you do timing.
Hey, Iru, are you there? Are you with us still, buddy?
Hey, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna get some water. I'll be
All
right back.
You go right ahead. I'm going to ask Iru a question. Iru, are you with us?
I'm here. Yeah.
So I assume you've been paying attention to this. Is this something that you could model and give us a 3D model of?
Well, for do that, because like I mentioned before, for me, angles and numbers and things like that, I understand the bottom line of all this, but I cannot follow in terms of doing something practical for myself. But I can offer my technical skills to be driving. I don't know.
I think what we need to do is distill the crux of this down into a couple of sentences. Like, this is what it is because this and therefore that. And if we can get it distilled down into something.
For me,
because I'm still a little confused myself.
But for me, it's just easy as, okay, Monday at this time, we connect, we make in StreamYard, I open my 3D software and somebody start telling me, okay, draw this line at that angle, draw that other line at another angle, and things like that. And I can be the just in this case like a workman. I cannot do it myself. If I review this presentation and I'm trying to understand, because trying to be in my shoes. I mean, it's not just the technical stuff, but also the English that maybe I get some confused. So for me, could be more practical is somebody, give me the instructions and see what I'm doing in real time with my 3D software and correct me. And I completely...
I think we can do that. I think we can do that.
Yeah,
I mean, we could have you work with Corey and Cami, because I think Cami's got a pretty good lock on it too.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a real important thing to put to the people out there doing CAD engineering in the audience right now and already putting it together, or Iru. When you're doing it on, again, you're using, because on mapping it, you're using the way that they're drawing the latitude, longitude lines in place, and that is part of the deception. Until you have the grid right to fill in distances, you have to do it sector at a time. That's why they keep the military up in sectors and only give you little sectors that you need to work with, and why the WGS 84 is not available as a whole layout, only as a wrapping or as a data, what do they call it, a data collection point?
A datum. Yeah,
a datum. Now, the beauty about this is with the globe, they provided the datum that we have to test against. So they provided the datum for them, and I believe that this is beautiful. I think it's fabulous work. It will prove the globe wrong. But if we use their datum set without unfolding it correctly, and just like pull it out into a Gleason's map where we're stretching distance and time, we're going to run across mistakes with it. So in other words, I think before you can just model it in 3D, you have to think, you need to understand the grid or look at the possibilities that the grid is not what it's going to, you think it's going to look like. For instance, you see all of the sky and you account for 100% of the sky, but you don't see all of the ground. So there could be areas on the ground that are not on the grid lines that are really there, like areas off of the map. So when you try to stretch out the land to fit the 100% sky, you could be running into a lot of problems with that. You just have to keep things in time and in distance.
Yep.
I think that would help nail it for me is okay, to lay it out like this. So if the Earth was a ball, this is what we would expect in our observations, but this is what we actually get in real observations. And then to be able to map that out in a 3D sort of AutoCAD layout would be very helpful visually for anybody to get this in 5 minutes, right? Because I'm still not really understanding the full value. I mean, I get it, I get the concept, but I'm not understanding the full value and the aha.
I prefer to do it more, but I am not an AutoCAD user. That is more, for example, Zack.
Yeah, Dr. Zack would be.
Whatever.
Zack,
Yeah,
in terms of that.
yeah.
But the advantage to combine maybe some technical drawing like AutoCAD with some 3D software like 3D Max or Cinema 4D is like in a 3D software like that, you can, drive your camera very freely and show in different perspective, and you can go with zoom. And it's like you take a flight and go whatever you want it in some way. And AutoCAD is just the same type of this presentation, but drawing in AutoCAD. You cannot go around and see from different perspective because AutoCAD is a 3D software, but not in the sense while you are working. While you're working is just plain CAD type of orthographic type of drawing. So in 3D is drawing directly in the 3D software. You have a little bit more of freedom to interact with, like if you are in the virtual reality. That is my opinion, of course, but
yeah. Well, I think we could
maybe somebody can help me here.
Sure, go ahead, Ben.
Can I ask a question?
Shoot.
I'm getting a little confused on some of the angles here. It's like, for instance, it seems like in one instance he's referring to like a protractor laying on the ground at 90 degrees versus 90 degrees where the protractor is standing up. Am I the only one's being confused about that, or what am I misunderstanding? Because I hear he says it's always at 90 degrees.
Okay, what you're misunderstanding is you're using 90 degrees as taking your head and taking it 90 degrees. It's again when they called it the meridian zone. When they taught it to him, they confused his vocabulary, so it would confuse talking to other people. So get rid of that 90 degrees on here. He's just meaning he's only meaning it in one directional from continually from again in time where it is. God, I'm not explaining this right. I'm seeing it as a visual. Corey, if you're here, step back in. But in other words, you're seeing 90 degrees is directly overhead, where his 90 degrees is as if you're faced in a compass in one direction and getting it to drop into that spot there, regardless of what height it's at.
So the reason the 90 degrees is there is because it's line of parallel.
It's the line of parallel, right? Not a 90 degrees from.
So in other words,
yes,
that's what sets you. In other words, because we were using large celestial objects, we've got to use line of parallel. Line of parallel is going to tell you whether you're on that object or you're off of that object. Because line of parallel, think about it, it's like a grid. I'll show you what I mean.
And he's right. And where your 90 degrees would be 90 degrees to you is only when you're at that sense spot. But as soon as you're off of it, you're still looking.
So look at this diagram here. You're basically creating a grid in the sky with the digital protractor and the Marks device. And this is how it works. This is Stowe from a Solo Times Observer. So now, remember, you're always looking at the sun's center mass. So what is the sun? The sun is always 90 degrees in the prime meridian zone, in the tropics where it operates in. You as the observer have to understand where your line of parallel is, okay? Remember, you only have, for the globe model, you only have 45 degrees. So once you exceed 45 degrees, you're at line of parallel because you are oriented, the observer is already oriented at 45 degrees to the sun at time. Okay.
You know what blows me away, Corey, is that Brian Burton was right when he said, because he just said exactly what Cami said. I mean, you guys literally have your own jargon that is not commensurate with the average layperson's jargon, right? And therefore, when you talk, we're all going, what the fuck? And there's like this
Right.
barrier
That's how
that's
I was
there.
with the prime meridian.
And Brian said that's absolutely true. He goes, you guys speak your own dialogue, and the key is breaking that down.
Right.
What's important to that? That's why it helps seeing in pictures. What this is called it's called false friends in language, and you get it a lot changing over languages, and it's words that are the same word that when you do them in this context, they take on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
So, like, again, in German, federal would mean at the very localist level, and in America it would be at the outerest level, but the word is the same. They do that in the military. They do it in gemology. They do it whenever they branch people out into the little divisions that they need to apply technology. What they do is they take their lingo and they make it with false friends. So in gemology, synthetic means real. That's just to give you another example again, because you have to work in reality, but they do this. So look for those tricks where he's using those things and stop in your mind and look at the picture, not the words he's using. His diagrams are really helpful.
So let me pose a question this way. This might help me to get it if the question makes sense. So, okay, assuming a ball Earth, okay, and assuming we're on the equator, assuming it's the equinox, keep everything real simple, okay. You take your first observation, and let's just say it's 90 degrees overhead to the sun. You are underneath the sun. If you look directly straight up, it's 90 degrees overhead.
No. You're going the wrong direction, dude. Okay.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, hold on. I'm saying just so I can follow it.
Yeah. You don't need to do that.
Okay.
Here's why. You put in that sun, you have to understand what the sun survey point does. In other words, that's really the first step. You got to put in the survey point. And that's when the sun gets 90 degrees to you, okay? You don't have your orienting station set up yet. You're only putting in your survey point. Because 3 hours from that time, once you put your survey point in, that sun is going to be 45 degrees to you. That's when you're going to get your first reading. Okay, so the sun is going to be 45 degrees. You are oriented on the globe model. You are oriented at that time at 45 degrees. So that 45, you're oriented. That's why the test box has those two numbers in it. 45, you're oriented, and you got 45 degrees to work with. So you got the bottom number is what you're oriented. That's why the observer is canted at 45 degrees. And the top number is what it can measure. Okay, so that 45 and 45 gets you to what? 90 degrees or line of parallel with the sun. Why? Because the sun, wherever it's at in the prime meridian zone, wherever it's at in the tropics, where it's operating zone, it's always 90 degrees. So you are now line of parallel with it. Okay.
I'm totally lost. I'm sorry, but I'm totally lost now. But let me just run something by you. Okay, so assuming a ball, right? What would we expect to see after 3 hours? And again, I want to start from a position where everything's in a straight line. And that's why I said you're going to start where it's high noon and the sun's directly overhead, directly over your head at 90 degrees. So that's where I want to start. Okay, 3 hours from now on a ball, what would you expect to see?
So
if it was a ball?
The maximum it can be for the globe is 45 degrees. That's it. You can't.
Well, but you would have to adjust. If it was a ball, you would have to adjust your.
No, it's because it's timing. Guess what? That's what the survey point does. Because guess where Mr. Sun's going to show up 24 hours later? At the survey point. That's why you put the survey, and that's what messes up the heliocentrists. That's why they're like, oh shit, you got a survey point. You can't. I'm pinning you to that spot. You ain't going nowhere. It's show and tell time now. You got to tell me if you're on a curve or if you're on a flat surface. Ain't no, you talk the talk. Now you got to walk the walk. It's test time. We're going to find out real quick in 3 hours. So that's why I put up this diagram.
Right, but they're assuming that you have rotated some 3,000 miles along a curve that, and now you've dropped and your angle has changed 45 degrees in that 3 hours. So that's what I'm saying. We have to battle them on their sort of playing field in order to get the point across to them who think that it is a globe spinning. You see what I'm saying?
So it's a sphere, right?
Well, okay, sure.
They're
Yes,
going to think
it's
it's a sphere, right?
It's
So
a
your
spinning
point,
ball.
45 degrees. If you do a 45-degree circle around that survey point, it's 45 degrees from that point. In other words, I do a radius. At 3 hours time, that sun is going to be out right at that radius at 45 degrees. You ain't going to get away from that, partner. You can try, but you ain't going to make it, because that sun's going to show up, guess what? At that
45 degrees. So there's no adjusting necessary, right?
Or
That's
less.
what the point
Or
is.
less. 45
So
or
the-
less.
so the-
Yeah, 45
point
or less.
is-
It could be the globe. The curve would work 45 and below. Both models will work at that. It's when it gets 46 and higher, that's when it's that's flat territory only. Because now you exceeded that range fan for that model. It goes into geometric failure. And that's why I got this diagram up. That red zone where you see those numbers on the left, you got 45 green, you're still green, you're good to go. 46, 47, 48, you're in the red, which equals 91, 92, 93. You're creating a grid. That's all you're doing. You're creating that grid in the sky. That's what it's going to look like. That's exactly what it's going to look like.
Okay.
And that's flat zone. When you're up in that red area, hey, that's flat Earth, baby. That's flat only.
Corey, there are members of FE Core that are definitely on top of this, that are understanding what you're saying. So I think what we need to do is set you up, or set us all up with the meeting with these guys. And we have CAD operators and stuff like that too. And God, all this is, I get it. It's a matter of jargon and simplifying. And I'm sitting here in utter disbelief that our vocabularies have been programmed to each of us respectively, and it's so radically different as to what they mean. I mean, Brian wasn't kidding, and I really think that that's probably the key here. But I also understand what you're saying with this as well. So we need to come to some sort of a mutual
That's
dialogue.
That's why I use diagrams, because I understand that. So I use a lot of diagrams, because I've had to train Afghans who couldn't read and write. And I had to operate weapons, tactical equipment, all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, okay, we're going to work with this. We're going to give you a lot of pictures, a lot of diagrams.
Lots of pictures. Yeah, exactly.
This is why it clicked in so much more with me than you.
Because you're visual. Yeah.
I looked at the pictures and put it all together and said, damn. But it's the pictures that did it. When you start listening to the words, and I'm seeing what you're pointing out, they really messed us up with the vocabulary that they gave you intentionally, Master Gunner. So again, it would calling that 90 degrees when it's something not like directly above you is going to, that's probably, again, maybe coming up with a different word for that. Because that's going to stop people in their tracks.
Yeah, it throws people off because they think, and that's why I try to put that in the beginning. I said, look, don't worry about that first 90 degrees. That sun is always 90 degrees. When you look at it, where it's operating, and it's operating in the prime meridian zone between the Tropic of Capricorn equator and Tropic of Cancer, that's its operating zone. It's always 90 degrees in there. That's its operating zone. It's just moving through that area at 90 degrees. You ain't got to worry about that first 90 degrees. It's always there. Same thing with the North Star. Why? Because we can get angles at it from all around, from all sides. So we know it's 90 degrees.
And the other thing is, as flat earthers, we're getting to the point now where we just don't see the Earth moving anywhere, right? And that's another thing that makes it really confusing as well. But
you really got to understand that line of parallel. Once you understand line of parallel and why, because it's a large celestial object, okay? The line of parallel is what's going to tell you, yeah, your model works, or no, you're out the box. You're going to geometric failure, because you ain't viewing that object from a curved surface now. So.
Yep. Okay. I was just looking at the message you left in text. Okay.
Did he write da-da-da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah. That's what he wrote. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Hey, Bob, did you want to look at the orienting station setup, or are you good on that, or do you have questions about it? Do you want to talk about that next, or?
Yeah, why don't we look at that? I mean, we have maybe another half hour or so, and then we'll call it a show. Because I don't want to completely fry out everybody's brain. But you know what? What I guarantee you is going to happen, and I know you're onto something here, Corey. I know you are. I get it, and my wife sees it. I see it fleetingly, but it makes sense to me. But it's just very difficult to adjust your thinking to stay with it.
It takes time. It's not, you're not going to get it in 10 minutes. Yeah, I understand. It takes time. But once you get it, then it's like, man, I should have knew this all along.
Right. What my issue is not that I don't get it. Is I'm trying to see how, first of all, it's a valuable proof for flat Earth, and how to explain it in, say, 3 sentences to somebody that believes the Earth's a spinning ball.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. Yeah. That's going to take some wordsmithing there.
Yeah. Yeah, that would
Taboo.
be difficult.
Yeah, that's a job for Ben. He's good at that.
Yeah.
The meaning of a true genius by Jeran was taking the complex and making it simple. And it's my favorite definition. But yeah, Ben, you're really, really good at that.
Yep, and Einstein said that too, and it is. But some things, they are very difficult, especially now. You understand it like it's nothing, and I want to be at that point because that's one of my gifts. Is I'm able, once I fully understand something, I can really simplify it, and that's why I'm going to pursue this until I have it down cold, because I really think you're onto it here. I really do.
Yeah, I like using a whiteboard too when I talk, and I don't like I said, I like using slides, and then I like using a whiteboard because sometimes people can, if you draw out or lay it out a little bit, then they can kind of understand it. But I always try and use a lot of diagrams, pictures, because again, people can kind of get it. And trust me, you ain't alone. It takes a little time to grasp it, but once you understand it, and this is why again, there's some really difficult things for the heliocentrists because they can't handle the sun survey point. Messes them up big time. You won't believe what that does to them. It's just like, whoa, okay, yeah, because it's accountability. There is accountability within the system, and it's because military science makes it like that. You have to, because if you ain't accountable, guess what? Somebody's going to die. You're going to get killed. Somebody in training. So that's the difference. And that's why it's designed. That's why I designed it the way it is. There's accountability. There's checks within the system.
Yep.
So,
but yes, Ben, I'm definitely with you. I'm sitting here reading your comments in the chat, and I'm definitely with you. We will definitely pursue it more. So let's get as much information as we can on it today, and then it'll give people a while to cogitate over it. And allow some discussion in chat. We can also have other people take a look at it. I mean, seriously, like Mark Sargent says, once you bring the hive mind to bear on it, I think it's going to yield some fruit. I really do. And I'm already seeing that, to some degree. It's just a very difficult mental concept, which I don't understand because it really doesn't seem that hard.
You know what it is? You know what it is? Pushing out that brain a little bit more. Come on. We got a little more room in there. Come on.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, see, I'm getting old, so I have an excuse.
It's all that knowledge trying to get
While you're listening to all of this, and again, doing it more than once will be helpful, but keep in mind that this passes the test of reality. In other words, this is not theoretical science. This is something that we fire weapons by, test, and use. And so...
I'd actually like to talk about the military science aspect, but I think that's going to be a little much. So, and I think it's better if we go over the orienting station because military.
I agree.
I tied the visual perspective in with military science. How the geometrics within the visual perspective, military science ties it in, and it ties it in tight. It's tight.
Okay, and also you did months worth of tests on this, and everywhere you went, pretty much flat Earth, right?
Yeah. So, and again, the hardest time for the globe, and the globe has the most to prove. In other words, it has the most difficult task, is the summer sun season, and then the late spring, and then the early fall, when that sun is up near you. Now, if you're doing the test in, let's say, Australia, again, that's going to be where the sun is closest to you. It has a hard time making that 45 degrees. That's where it goes into geometric failure. The prime meridian going to be another problem for it. In the prime meridian zone, it's going to struggle. It's going to get beat up. And when we looked at Resolute Time, Operation Resolute Time, I did 81 tests. It failed 70% of the test. I think it's like 57 or 58 tests out of the 70, or 81 tests, which is 70%, right at 70%. So the globe model went into 70% failure.
This is another one for you, Corey, on your notes, and this will be hard because you present and you think in the military way. But if you change the meridian zone to between the tropics, people will know where you're talking about.
I got you. Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. All right.
Yep. So I think if we talk a little bit about the OS station.
Okay.
And that's kind of simplistic, talk about the equipment, why we use this equipment.
Right. Because, we were talking about that earlier. Zack, when he did his measurements, he was using a sextant. And, as I told you before, one of the big things going around the net right now is the use of a sextant and how, it's basically proving the flat Earth and or a flat star trail, right? One of the two, but it's not going along with what what we would expect for a ball Earth and a atmosphere full of stars, that would be orienting themselves in a ball. Which I find incredibly interesting, and this is the same type of thing, but this is actually a more accurate way to do it than using a sextant.
So the reason I use the angle finder, the digital protractor, and this is the orienting station setup, is basically comprised of a tripod, the platform, which is a whiteboard. You can write right on it, platform-based stabilizer board. I use a stabilizer board. That's the board underneath it. It's easier to shift on a board than just the tripod legs, and then the digital protractor. So very easy setup. Where was the equipment? I think I have there we go.
Yep,
so the equipment, because I chose this because of ease of use. In other words, an angle finder or digital protractor is really easy to use. It runs on a 9-volt battery. This is Neotech. Costs about $35, $36. And I don't know if that's the same price, but when I bought these off of Amazon. I have two. They were about $35, $36. The most expensive item is the compass, and I use a military grade compass, but you don't have to. You can use just a regular compass. All you need to do is determine, your north-south line of magnetic.
How about a cell phone compass? Does that do the trick?
Sure, you could use that.
Yeah, because everybody's got one of those.
Yeah, they're in phones, but you're going to need a compass because you want to orient that. You're going to have to orient that Marks device, and then measure the. When you take your reading, I always measure the azimuth to the sun from my location. In other words, I want to know the azimuth the sun was. So all you do is you don't have to point the compass at the sun. You just step back and point it at the angle or the digital protractor, and that's your azimuth to the sun. So it's a lot easier instead of looking up at the sun. But these items, just for kind of very basic, very simple, and I tried to keep the cost down under $300. And actually, you can get this stuff for probably under $200. You don't need nothing really expensive. Simple tripod, a dry erase marker, a plumb bob. Plumb bob is basically when you set up your survey point. That's you'll find different sizes to them. And then number 7 is a tri-level, and it's got 3 level bubbles on. I put that on the platform. You want to make sure that your orienting station is level. There's also a level on the digital protractor, so you need to look at those levels, and you always want to make sure that OS station is level. You don't want to introduce error. Okay, So you want that for accuracy. The single bubble level vials for the Marks device. And it said the compass, and then you're going to use a sun shield. Always use eye pro, sun shield, and sunglasses when you're looking at the sun, protective wear. And then finally, you have a tape measure, which you need to measure your station height. And I do my measurements at a 1/2 meter. Ideally, you want to be closest to the Earth's surface. And 1/2 meter really gets you kind of down closer, unless you do a dig down and you do it right at surface level. 1/2 meter is about as close as you're going to get to the ground. The difference I found between a 1/2 meter and 1 meter in degrees was right around a 1/2 to 3/4 of a degree. So somewhere in there. So I just, again, that 1/2 degree I count as an error. And what I look at is I'm a 1/2 meter above. I'll give that model a 1/2 degree, just an area. It still ain't gonna make it, but I'm gonna give it that 1/2 degree, just out of error. And then your marking stake, and you can use a little coin, a penny, or a bottle cap for your survey marking stake. So it's very these items, like I said, are relatively, they're inexpensive. And then the additional items, of course, the Marks device, which is all it is basically a 2-foot strip of wood with a hole cut in the center, and then 2 nails or 2 screws and a suspended line, center line. And then,
hey Corey, do you by any chance have any video of you setting up a physical demonstration?
There is. It's on the website. So if you go in the video section, there's a bunch of videos on there. There's ones for if you want to see how the Marines does, a Marine guy does a sun shot and a star shot, or a sun shot. It's on the website. So there's also for how to set up the Marks device. I go through that, and then how to set up the orienting station. It's on the site. So the videos are all on the site.
Excellent. Okay.
And I go step by step. And then this is like I said, this is the digital protractor. I selected for ease of use. And really you can get kids involved in this. And this is why I did it, because it's really easy to use. It has an accuracy of plus or minus 5 degrees. It's digital. It runs on a 9-volt battery. There's a level on it. And all you're doing is that top rail guide. You're just sighting down that top rail guide at your center mass of your object. That's all you're doing. When I checked this digital protractor against a manual protractor, I found no difference. I had the same reading. So there was no error in the difference. And you always want to check that. You want to, anytime you're doing measurements, even with any type of device, you always want to make sure you want to check it or make sure it's calibrated. And if it has a calibration, is there an error in the calibration? Is there a tolerance zone? That's something you need to look at.
Yeah, and that's not much worse than the sextant was 0.2 degrees of an error.
Yeah. This is
that's pretty close.
Because it's all just push button. You just point and push.
Yeah.
It don't get.
Yeah, and the sextants cost a lot more than that.
And it's inexpensive.
Yeah, this is great idea.
Yeah, it's inexpensive, and that's one of the things when I looked at developing this. I want to make this inexpensive. I don't want somebody to break the bank when they're trying to do this. So very easy to use.
I just pasted up the information page on your website that takes you to the videos and stuff. So
yeah. There's all the videos are on there, and I go step by step, each step. The Marks device. This is the Sun Survey Positioning device. It's just a simple piece of wood. You want to make sure it's relatively a good straight flat piece of wood. Cut a center hole in it, and then you're going to run a string line right down that center. That string line is going to be that's going to be the line of magnetic, but it's also going to tell you when that sun is it's 90 degrees to me when it gets parallel to you. Okay, and that's important. Once it does that, then you mark your survey time. This creates that sun survey point. And the reason that you have this, you need to set the geometric edge. Now this is where you're going to take your angle measurements, because you have proper Earth to Sun alignment with the observer. Now you should get clean angles. In other words, they're not arbitrary. In other words, I could put this Marks device down, do my alignment. I've got alignment, but I got Johnny over here. He's going to take a sun angle measurement. He's just going to set up over there 50 yards away. You're not on alignment, dude. You're adding an additional error angle. You're not getting a clean angle.
Does it make any difference what your elevation above sea level is, or is that irrelevant?
Elevation is key, just as station height, just as
no, you're talking that's above ground. I'm talking above sea level.
Yes, yeah, elevation. Okay. That's why I went over it in the beginning. Elevation is critical, and let me see if I got it. I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. So here's elevation. Here's the effects of elevation and why we need to understand the effects of elevation on testing. So in other words, the true geometric form or the shape of the Earth is going to be at sea level. That is the lowest elevation, okay? Right at sea level, okay? I won't say it's the lowest because you can get below sea level, but right at sea level, okay? Or at sea level zero, right at zero. Now, notice at sea level, when you look up at an elevated object, the lower in elevation, the higher the angle, the measured angle is going to be. Just a matter of geometry. When I talk to heliocentrics, they're like, well, I don't know what you mean. Come on, dude, really? You don't know that at an elevated object, the lower in elevation, you will get a higher angle? Okay.
Oh, they don't understand perspective. Yeah, that's why. And they deliberately ignore that. Yeah. I mean, it is willful ignorance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's very critical. Now, if you're at 1500, you're going to have a little bit lower sun angle, higher elevation. The more you go, 5,000 feet high elevation, you're going to have lowest sun angle at higher elevation. Operation Resolute time when I did the test, a 6-month test, that was 5,963 feet. And when I did the test here in North Carolina, I was 186 feet, almost a mile difference. So again, higher sun angle because I was at lower elevation. But if your model can't pass that high elevation, guess what? It ain't going to get any better for you when you go down to sea level. Because if you ain't passing that high elevation, you surely ain't going to pass at sea level or at 1,500 feet.
In any of your tests, did it ever pass at sea level?
I haven't. I've only been at 186 here in North Carolina, so I haven't done any tests at sea level. But you're going to get the highest elevation. It's going to the easiest test for the globe is going to be high elevation because you're going to get lower sun angle.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't. It failed 70% of the time. I was shocked. I was like, "Whoa!"
That's amazing.
Up in Mez, I looked at the sun. I was like, "Man, that sun is way high in the sky." It was like 9 o'clock, and that thing was up there 50+ degrees.
Yeah, this reminds me of something that Jeran said years ago. Jeran, you may remember this when you were talking about the sun. When you look out the window and you see the sun at one level, and then if you go upstairs, how come you don't see the sun streaming up into the sun? Do you remember that? Oh, Jeran? Hello, Jeran. Well, he must have walked away or something.
Maybe got a bathroom break or something.
Probably.
So yeah, elevation is critical, Bob. Very, very critical. That's one of the things you need to, when I saw some of that stuff, I think you were showing that, where they were taking test measurements. Well, what's the elevation? What's the measuring height? Those are all critical factors.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
Again, that's the difference. So.
All right. So, all right. Well, anything else that you think we should cover before we wrap this one up? But we're definitely going to have you back, Corey.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I personally really want to pursue. I want to bring it into FE Core. FE Core is already expressing an interest in it. And I want to see what we can do with this because, this if I'm reading this right, and I think I am, it's a globe killer, absolute globe killer.
Yeah. And
Sorry, I was good.
Oh, okay. I just said, do you remember that when you were talking years ago about the sun angles coming into the house on the first and second story?
Right. Yeah. That was actually written in a book from 1900. It was a flat Earth book, and that was one of the experiments that the guy was mentioning. And I was like, man, I've never even heard that discussed. But yeah, the fact that no angles would ever come up into a house through a window.
Right. Pretty crazy. But anyway, okay. So
yeah,
what else?
yeah. Anytime. Like I said, I'm always open to talking to people about it. I'm very approachable. If they have questions, like I said, they can field them through you and then send them to me or however.
Well, do you have a YouTube account by any chance?
I do, but most of my stuff, if you go on the website, my website, and they can email me off of that. My email is on the website.
Oh, okay. All right. You could do that. Or I was thinking if you wanted, if you had a YouTube account, I could make you a moderator on this channel, and then you could answer questions directly.
Yeah, I do. I do. I have a YouTube account.
Okay. Well, we'll get that set up afterwards, and I will put that in the show notes then, what your account name is and all that stuff, and I'll set you up as a mod, and then that way you can, because that's something, I mean, I think all of us here are very interested in the questions that are going to come in.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you never know when somebody's going to ask that question just that way, and it's going to go, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like I said, I expect it takes time. This isn't something this is, for lack of a better word, you guys got the one-on-one stuff down. I mean, that stuff is all over. You guys got some really great material. This kind of gets into the 201 and the 301 stuff. A little bit more but
we want that.
Yeah.
We absolutely want that. You bet.
Cover that area. So, but I think you can, once you learn it, you can teach this to kids. I really believe you can teach this at the 5th grade level when students are introduced to geometry. I really think, because kids like doing experiments, So I really think you could introduce this to kids at the 5th grade level. I think they would pick it up if you know how to explain it and talk it, because kids really get interested in stuff like this.
Yep. Absolutely true. Okay, cool. Well, I guess we will go ahead and wrap that up then, and wrap this up for a show. And I'm going to go around one time really quick for everybody. Well, actually, hang on just a second. Let me take care of some business here. I want to give some shout outs out for some of the tips that came in, which are always very much appreciated. Adolf Hitler says, Heil Globebusters. Thank you so much for that, Adolf. Karina Toronto says, thank you for your great work. God bless you and your families. Thank you so much, Karina. Jeff Rust threw us a tip. Thank you so much for that. Shekel Graverberg says, many happy returns of the day, Bob. My 4-year-old granddaughter shares your birthday. Oh, awesome. Another Scorpio 6. Nice. And then John Sokowitz says, happy birthday, Bob. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Much, much appreciated. And again, we really appreciate your tips and your support, because you definitely, keep us going, and it is greatly, greatly appreciated. So, all right. So we got that out of the way. And all right. So let me go ahead and go around then for one last turn on the panel. And Ben, you were kind of quiet, but I know you have some thoughts about, oh, wait a minute. Is Ben still with us? I don't see Ben with us. Oh, well, I guess Ben kind of bowed out. All right. Well, then we will contact Ben later. So let's go ahead and go to you then, Zack, and get your final comments.
Yeah, I think this is just brilliant. I can't believe I never thought of it. All that thinking I was doing about the sun, I never even brought time into, and the angles and what it has to do. Yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it. And I can understand why I was never taught to do anything like this before. In school or anything like that, they never brought up anything like this.
Yeah, and wouldn't you know that it would, the elite would obviously see that the people that they trained highly in ballistics, motion ballistics, that they would kind of give them a different dialogue to confound the speech. I'm just blown away by that. Honestly, I am. It's because I'm seeing it so clearly. That just kills me. But all right, beautiful. Okay, and John TheMorgile, what do you got coming up, sir?
Yeah, a couple of chapters of Zetetic Cosmogony are on the way. Although, man, my laptop computer just crapped out. I guess it was yesterday or the day before. So like it just absolutely won't turn on. So everything that I was working on is kind of on hold until, well, I went and bought a Chromebook, El Cheapo Chromebook, but I had to return it because I just can't do anything with it, because it's like basically a glorified phone. So I had to return that. And so I'm gonna hit a pawn. The pawn shops are all closed on Sundays here, but I'm gonna hit a pawn shop tomorrow and see about getting a cheap laptop that I can use for finishing up, doing video editing and stuff. So everything I've got's on hold until then, but I do have stuff in the works, and I'll be getting that out ASAP. But I had a great time learning new stuff, and I'm sure we'll get this to click. And I'd like to, maybe distill it down and do a video on this topic that we discussed today. Maybe 15-minute or less video that gets the gist of it, because I think that it is a very valuable proof. I think the key to it is, globe earth believers and proponents don't have a very big attention span when it comes to flat earthers. So I think the key is to, try to get it distilled down into something that pops off in, 10 or 15 minutes, if that's possible. So maybe we can work on that together as a team and as a hive mind. And I think it's definitely doable and something that will be extremely valuable. So I really appreciate Corey's work and effort and time that he put into this. And thanks so much, everybody listening, watching live. Love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, sounds good. And maybe, John, at some point, now that you're in the neighborhood, you could drop that laptop by, and I could see if I can, find any quick fix for it. Or worst case scenario, I could always pull the hard drive out and transfer the data onto something else.
Absolutely. It might just be the battery. Honestly, if it's something silly like that, that would be great. Yeah, man, I'll need to get your address and stuff. I'll definitely stop by one of these days soon for sure.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
The slice is going to be available for download it and take a look.
What's that?
Say that again.
The slides, the images, the presentation, the PowerPoint.
Yes, I will make it downloadable. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I'll drop it over to you, but I'll put it in the show notes and all that stuff. He's going to make all that information. So he's basically given us everything all on his website, in the PowerPoint presentation with all of his show notes. And then he will also be available in the YouTube comments and also on email for those of you that want to email him directly. And, because I'm dying to see what comes out of this. I really am. And I will say this, Globers, if you are going to go through the comment section on Globebusters, if you're going to come in here with an attitude and be a jerk about it, then nobody's ever going to see your comment. I hold all comments for review. And if you're being a jerk, I just delete them. And I absolutely have no compunctions doing that. So if you want your questions answered, you will be civil, you will ask legitimate questions, and you will get an answer. Otherwise, forget about it. Okay? So, all right. So Hiro, back over to you. What do you got, sir? What do you got coming up?
I'm just because I was taking my last chance to get a little bit of the dinner that is left, so maybe that is why I was a little bit off of the final part of the presentation. But it's really awesome. In fact, I want to the downloaded version because, like 3-4 months ago, a master of navigation, it showing the Flat Earth Spanish community, And the guy is really nice. He's a professor. I say master, but he's a professor with 25 years of experience giving lecture and teaching. He have a school of sailing, I think is the correct word in English. And he starts champion on the flat earth. He makes a few presentation, and it's very well with the angles and measurements and distances, things like that. So I will try to translate some of these presentation and trying to share with the Spanish community, with the so-called expert in the Spanish community in terms of the mathematics, and see what we can do it. And I say it again, anytime you want Bob or Cami or whoever to make something in 3D, I'm available. We need just take into consideration my time zone, but I can take a few hours and trying to model something in 3D. Beside that, I'm just uploading a new video in my Rockfin account, and I just finished one crazy week in my Spanish channel with like 6 interviews, and making some additions in terms of the video to clean up a few parts and keep uploading content.
Okay, beautiful. All right, I'm sitting here munching on hard candies, guy. I don't know if you guys were hearing that or not, but I'm chewing on them, and then I realized I didn't mute my mic. So if you're hearing this crunch, it's me eating these hard candies, which I'm like totally addicted to these things.
Well,
They're so good.
I'm eating peanut M&Ms. I'm eating peanut M&Ms. So how the hell could I hear you crunching when I'm crunching?
No, yeah, no doubt. Well, they're actually they're like little vitamin C hard candies, right? But I mean, they're so good. I just can't stop eating them. So I'm eating them like candy.
Yeah, vitamin C. Okay, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. See, so I'm doing the healthy junk food. There you have it. All righty then. Okay, so Cami, that brings us around to you. You have any final remarks for Corey or anybody?
I do. I think, again, the more people understand and look more into this, Corey, the more helpful it will be. And it has all kinds of applications. And again, I like the fact that it filters through reality so perfectly. So I think we should give it a lot of consideration because we use it in reality, not just theoretically. So that gives it a lot of weight. I also, I don't know, I threw up a screen share.
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I wanted to just pop that up. That was from somebody at Flattoberfest, Suzanne, who is putting out something that Bob had for his birthday. These were Truth Smacks granola mix that was infused with peppermint. He really liked them. I don't know if you can read the screen, Bob, but not only is it like a trail mix, but she's putting on it information plainly impossible out of this world. This will set your world spinning, not really, but she puts on information of flat Earth versus heliocentric on her product.
Oh, that's so cool.
And
yeah.
And Bob, you sampled it. I broke a tooth, so I did not get to sample it. But I just wanted your
the trail mix is absolutely outstanding. I mean, definitely the best trail mix I've probably ever eaten. And I'm not just saying that. I truly mean that. I really, really liked the infused with peppermint. It has just this really light, dusting hint of it, and it just offsets the mix. It's just killer. Really good stuff. So, yeah, we'll put some information on that in the show notes. Maybe you can go buy some from her. I think you won't be disappointed. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, it's at www.truthsmacks.com. And again, this was somebody that we kind of almost met at Flattoberfest. We were both shy, and we were both working and running from place to place because we both had events going on during the event. But somebody I'd like to spend more time with, Suzanne. It was great to see you at Flattoberfest, a real person. I think we should support each other.
Absolutely. Okay, beautiful. All right, and I think that brings us around finally, last but not least, to you, Jeran. What do you got coming up, sir?
Sweet. Now Nothing, same old stuff. I think this week I'm going to do a NASA comedy hour with a special guest. Conspiracy music guru is going to join me, so that'll be fun to have some NASA. I'm a little lost from today, but that's okay. I'll be talking to those who actually get it and helping me along. Like Bob, though, I can't wait until I do get it, because when I get it and it clicks, then I love explaining it to other people and bringing it to more eyes. So I'm sure I'll get it eventually. Was drawing. If you saw my pad here, I'm drawing pictures and angles and things the whole show.
I can just see you doing that too.
So yeah, we have that, and then we have all kinds of fun. Back to the GNN and Baby Truth show, my show on Friday, and up next we have RV Truth is going to come out with some more great truths that we all need to.
Oh boy,
we all need to listen to.
33.
Yeah, if you go back, I probably said 33 words in that sentence too. Knowing me, by the way, Campanella is a 30 name, so for that, my grandparent, great grandparent was the bell ringer somewhere, and he knew that in the future we were going to be part of this Masonic plan to overtake the world.
Oh, of course, man. Oh, of course.
Sure, I don't want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What? No,
Hmm.
and I was listening all the show completely with Linda, and yes, sometimes RB is a little bit peculiar, if you want to see in that way. He is like
but it's going a little further.
He passed two towns, like we say here in the Spanish community, because he goes so deep, and of course for me it doesn't has he's a little bit jealous. That was what I feel when I listened in your live stream, and also with the other guy who blamed to sell mask. I have the same issue in my Spanish community with my Teen Spring store, and I take it away from Teen Spring. But at the beginning, it was something like the store offered me for free, and I start pressing okay of a lot of products, cup, t-shirt, whatever, bags, things like that. And then I take it off, but blame, taking that to blame all the rest of things, and it's a little bit hard.
Someone's going to have to.
And he's
fill
very
me in on
fanatic.
what exactly happened between, I guess it was Dearth and RV and a couple of other.
Oh hell, it's all over the internet, John.
Yeah, you need to see the video.
The problem with it is you can't go after. If anybody knows Brian from High Impact Flicks, the guy is like so caring about the world, and just everything he does is. He's somebody I would actually look up to as like a content creator. I just like the way he does things.
Content, yeah.
Me too.
So when
I like him.
somebody comes after him and says that it's because his name is Brian Young and that adds to 33, and because just nonsense, just nonsense. So anyway,
man, my name, Iru. It means number 3 in some Spanish special place, because I cannot say in English the town where it belongs, my name, but also has 3 letters, and I also have 3 names.
Oh,
Yeah,
so that makes you a Mason. Yeah.
Yes, of course, man. No,
Wow, you are convicted.
As I guide before reincarnate. That is my religion, if you want to think that way. This guy is too fanatic of Catholic and Jesus Christ thing, and yeah, I cannot.
Well,
I respect
my
that
favorite
position,
color.
but
don't say your favorite color is orange. Don't do it.
No, I was going to say my favorite color is 33.
Oh,
there you go.
Favorite color is blue. You can see my own
the title of his video is Patricia Steer and Flat Earth Fokker. So he's about to claim that Flat Earth Fokker faked his death, and you know what he's about to claim about Patricia. So people like this are just into division, and and
also Rob Skiba, when he talks about Rob Skiba death was fake. Wow, man.
Well, that's crazy, and he's just dissing all of us who knew Rob, and who also know Rick Hummer, and Rob and Rick were like best friends. It's like, that's really rude. That's just unbelievably rude, and it's all because they want to get popular for whatever reason. So they start, he gets a hold of Richie from Boston's audience, and so suddenly he's got like 1,000+ live viewers, and he's like gets power hungry, right? And he starts telling people, hey, you better unsubscribe from Dave Weiss because he adds up to 33, and And it's insane. It's utterly insane.
And I used to watch a lot of RV stuff, and I thought he had okay content. I was into conspiracy theory stuff, but one thing I did notice, he made a lot of unsubstantiated claims, and I just pretty much quit watching them because, one or two unsubstantiated claims, that's one thing, but when you start personally attacking people and slandering people based on just very tenuous connections that are, nothing burgers as far as I'm concerned, without anything backing them up, but your opinion, to me, that's real shaky ground. So I don't know. I'm not trying to diss him or anything, but yeah, I can't get on board with that.
I'm just disappointed in him. He's been a pillar in the truth community for a long time, and then something happens where it just seems like he snapped and went on this power hungry binge, and all of a sudden everybody's his enemy, and with such flimsy evidence, my God, everything adds up to a 33. I remember one time about 3 years ago, there was this guy, Flat Earth Data, that had just popped on the scene, and he was going around posting everywhere that FE Core added up to 33, TheMorgile added up to 33.
All of our names. Put like
Jeran, really?
Campanella adds to 33.
Oh, it's unbelievable, dude. It's like
what he does though is he'll use 3 or 4 different numerologies. He won't stick with one. He'll just use 3 different ones and pick whichever, cherry pick it, right?
Yeah. It's pathetic is what it is, and I'm really, really disappointed in RV. Let's just say that, because his work has really been stellar for years. And,
he does a good job, right? It's like, he's taught me some things. Now, I don't believe everything he says, but I don't believe everything Bob says. I don't believe everything Morgile says, right?
What? You don't?
We take, no, Bob, don't come after me. You got to take the good, leave the bad. But just so you know, I always draw the line at somebody lying. And with Richie from Boston the other day and his thing with RV, he said, well, when I went looking for Rob Skiba's obituary, all I could find was there's another Rob Skiba who died on the same day in the same location as Rob. And I said, what? That is weird. So I go looking. I cannot find that. So I've already reached out to RFB and RV both and said, either RFB needs to get me the link to this person he's talking about, or else then that's when I'll go and make a video about somebody. Because I'm not going to deal with liars. Like if you're going to, he's a Christian and he's going to call into question the death of another Christian by lying about finding somebody who on the same day in the same location. That's ridiculous.
Exactly. I met Richie from Boston, I don't know, about 3 years ago. He actually came over to our house with ODD, and, he was really standoffish and just basically kind of a jerk. And of course he describes himself as a jerk, but I mean, he really was. He was very off-putting and I just didn't really care much for the guy, and I've never really watched him either. But RV I have watched, and that's why I think it's really disappointing to see him take this road. Dissing other people. Thinking that by dissing them that he's going to crawl up on their backs and take their fame. Right? It just doesn't work that way. It's absurd. And anybody that has been doing truthing, been in the truth community long enough, doing what we do, we know it's not easy. Hell, I mean, everybody calls me a shill, both on the ball and on the flat earth side. Well, not everybody, but enough people do that it gets a little depressing. It gets wearing. But, I press on because I'm doing this, according to what I believe and what I want to share with other people. And, that's all you can do is share what you think and what you believe, and share it with the intention that it's going to make the world a better place. And that's what I try to do. But, you can't please everybody all the time. So
he yelled at Meaty Bear the other night. He yelled at Meaty Bear and he's like, yeah, you just wear a mask. It's like, you don't show your face, bro.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't even share his face.
Somebody else ask. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
When you start looking for 33s everywhere, you're going to find them. And honestly, he's obsessed with the 33 thing. And I had a chat where I was actually on the same panel as him a while back, and I kind of busted his chops a little bit, but I was just messing with him. But really, it gets to the point where you just got to get off that 33 kick at some point, man. I mean, come on. It's been like 10 years. Wow.
Yeah. And there's 33. No doubt that they put 33 in everything. But I mean, don't you think you would think it's a little stupid that, people that are truthers would be, purposely putting 33 everywhere. So, conspicuously, it's absurd. It's like that's
right. I had no idea, honestly, that my name was a 33. Like that's the first I've heard of that. So
that's what Flat Earth Data said. I've never checked it. I honestly don't know, and I don't give a shit either.
No. Here's what we need to stop giving them so much power. These symbols, these things, they have power because the people like us give them power. If you stop giving them power and you just use it all the time and joke around about it, it loses its luster. And not stand in awe of every 33 you see and say, "Oh, I just am not like that. I don't give them any credit. Screw them."
Yep.
And also, the fact that he never show his face, his real name, things like that. It's not fair if you are going to supposedly expose, or you're going to talk with real people.
No, he has Rob Skiba. He showed him like 4 times doing like a little hand signal with his hands. And I'm like, dude, Rob Skiba does 15 conferences a year.
Yeah.
Where he stands in front of an audience for 3 hours.
And what about his logo? Because he put a face of his name, first of all, Russian.
Yeah,
he's a communist. What's going on? And then he talks a lot about John Carpenter, the director of the movie They Live, and he exposed for being a Freemason, and he used a face of that character with the name Russia. So if you want to start, pick up things and bring it to the table,
yeah, it's sad.
Guarantee it. His real name is a 33 name. I bet you my bottom dollar. In one
It wouldn't surprise me.
One of the multiple numerologies. Oh yeah, for sure.
It wouldn't surprise me, but whatever. I'm just greatly disappointed in him, and I cannot believe he's going down this road. And it's just pathetic. People that have to try and discredit other people by such weak freaking evidence. It's unbelievable. Or making out outright lies, saying that I proved, because I unequivocally proved that the Earth moved 15 degrees per hour. That isn't what I proved at all, and that's just been completely twisted, and, it just goes on. But whatever, they're going to do whatever they do. So, jackasses will be jackasses. So there you have it. All right, guys. And yes, by the way, yes, Mac Parhar, I haven't heard out too much more, but he was found unconscious in his bathroom a few days ago, and then later pronounced dead at the hospital. I don't think they know what the cause of death is. Mac Parhar, Flat Earth Fokker.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
I heard something. Was it also Jibby Jedi?
Jibby Jedi is also dead, yes.
Oh my goodness!
It's unbelievable.
Wow,
this is kind of scary,
They say it comes in 3. Well, they say it comes in 3s, right? I mean, I hate to belittle it or anything, but that's 3, isn't it? Wow, right in a row.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's hope it stops there, because that's.
Yeah, it's myself and Alex and Dave all lost our moms within a year and a half. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's something that you'll find everywhere, and I'm this is totally moving away from anything 33, honestly. But you'll find that sort of bad omens or bad fortune does tend to come in waves of 3, especially like deaths of people close to you or within the same. Yeah.
Well, hurry up and die so we can disprove that. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Pick me. No, don't pick me.
Oh Lord.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, that's it. We are out of here. We will see you on Wednesday. And until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind, because there is truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Bye. Peace.